What's up, Reefer Revolutionaries? It's 4 p.m. in California on Sunday, June 21st, 2020. Happy Father's Day to all the dabbing daddies from Cannabis Saves the World. Leading Israeli researcher David Meiri says cannabis for Alzheimer's and dementia is showing promising results in his lab. While around the country, national, state, and local lawmakers call for legalization and decriminalization of cannabis. Are they the same thing? Plus, new episode, Cannabis Helps Dementia.
The murderers keep murdering. The churches keep a-burning. The rapists keep a-raping. And the tide ain't turning. Uncle Sam, for all your power, things get worse every hour. It seems to me your energy's unwasted, chasing my friends and me. So hey, Uncle Sam, hey there, Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. The terrorists keep terrorizing.
It's right, Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. Uncle Sam, lots of people in Uncle Sam trying to make some moves this week. It seems this police reform subject has brought up the idea that maybe we should end the war on drugs. What's up, everybody? What's up, Reefer Revolutionaries? DC here, along with Coach Chela.
Hi.
And everybody joining in the chat. Brian Arbor jumping in first in. Hi, fam. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. This dab's for you. Oh, we have a dab. We have a little dip dabber going as well. We'll do that at 4:20. Ellen Blasey jumping in. Hi, Ellen. Ugly Adams. My Father's Day present was some healthy clones. Thanks, TJ and Bradley. What a wonderful, lovely present. Oh, Brian, thank you so much for the super chat.
Nice.
Because
Thank
I
you,
want more
Brian.
Cannabis Saves the World. Thank you so much for your support. That's right, guys. We can't take super chats now. They
Right
have
now only.
We've been waiting for years to get monetized, demonetized, monetized, and as soon as this video is over live, we will be demonetized, or at least slightly monetized. Is that fan is like blowing hurricanes over here?
Hurricanes. Well, let me fix that, honey. Allow me to fix.
Just you can turn it down on low, maybe.
I'm
It is
working
quite
on
nice.
it.
It feels quite nice.
I'm working on it, babe. I'll
Yes.
get there.
Thank you, Streamlabs, for informing us
we
that
go.
Brian Arbor did indeed just
So
give us a
good.
super chat. Yes, so the super chats are enabled. Thank you so much. You can also support Cannabis Helps Dementia directly, too, over on the Anchor platform /Cannabis Helps Dementia. You can do a monthly support of that. We still have our Patreon. We know things are very challenging right now, so we certainly appreciate any support you give us. Because our business isn't coming back anytime soon either.
Our business is finito.
Vegan Metro jumping in. Hello, Vegan Metro. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the show,
Hi,
guys.
Ellen Blasey.
We are starting at 4 o'clock directly now, minus the cheesy YouTube music, rolling up to 4:20, and we will enjoy a bag perhaps at 4:20, or a dab, or we're herb vaporizing some Harley Sue 1-to-1, which is often nice. Little 1-to-1, because also in the news this week, turns out one of the cannabis industry's lies is that high THC is not necessarily your best friend, and that low THC products actually do as much, if not better.
And I find that interesting. I'm sure, as you probably I might have cut you off. Sorry.
No, it's okay. We're not even in the news section.
Building on what you were saying, doctors are mentioning things like that to us also, that we've been interviewing and stuff, that low doses are effective for medical stuff. And, it's worth
Super
trying.
effective.
I mean, it extends my supply, so it's certainly worth trying. Maybe
No
it's
doubt.
worth trying, less. I know that I've definitely used less often in the last couple weeks, because I just haven't been around at home, like when we've been cleaning out Carolyn's house and stuff.
Finally
It's just
over.
it's just been long days, and no, I haven't focused on medicating, and I definitely have extended my supply, but I'm still feeling good in all the ways I want to feel.
It's interesting. Of late, I have been, because I've often complained of not being able to get high enough, or that, I just don't get as high. And you do build up a tolerance. They often talk about doing resets of your receptors. Turns out there's a few more than the 2 that we know of, actually, which is really interesting. We're going to talk about some of the research coming out of Israel. You saturate those receptors, and sometimes you don't get as high. And so that all of that, it's like too much vitamin C. You just piss it out. If you take too much, right? If your body can't absorb it. Mm-hmm. So if your THC receptors can't take in the THC, it's just going out, and you're wasting money. And I have often mentioned to Chela that the Harley Sue is very nice and very enjoyable. And
Which I never would have thought.
And I really don't see a big difference in smoking super high strains of cannabis, at least traditional smoking, maybe dabbing, maybe, we don't use a bong, we vape, vape bags or pipe, roll joints. Going from say 18 to 27, I don't notice a big difference in my high.
Maybe if we had been, not smoking for a month and then tried one day and one the next day, we'd be able to figure out a difference. But, this is where we need more science. We need more research.
Exactly. This is where the research is needed. And that's the kind of cutting edge research that's coming out of Israel that we're going to talk about in the news section. Forbes this week, picking up another story about how, guess what? Cannabis helps dementia. Interestingly enough, the same author who wrote the story this week in Forbes, featuring researcher Dedi Meiri, David Meiri in Israel, and the work he does mostly with cancer. And that's really it was an all-encompassing interview on this webinar. Mm-hmm.
We've seen him a couple times at CanMed, and he is a cancer expert and a researcher who's literally pulling this plant apart into all the different cannabinoids and seeing what works on which cancer. It's very exciting what he's doing in his lab. And Dr. Hergenrather, sorry.
Go ahead, no.
And Dr. Hergenrather went and spent 3 months in his lab last year and helped with that research. I mean, it's a very exciting, slow, ongoing process. Slow.
And what also came out in that
slow.
Interview, and we'll link to this webinar, this complete interview with Dedi Meiri, talks about how there's not just 2 receptors, cannabis receptors. They found, I think, up to like 47 now, 44 different receptors.
Right. Yeah.
That they've just numbered. They haven't really named them, that cannabis attaches to. So it ain't just CB1 and CB2.
Right.
It's just your grandfather's receptors anymore. It's not your granddaddy's endocannabinoid system. And it turns out that high level THC cannabis you're paying for may not be actually worth paying for, which is good news for people. And it is true. The more and more doctors and people we talk to with regards to cannabis and dementia, the low dosing seems to be the most effective, whether that's being a dilution of the THC with CBD and other cannabinoids, or it's in concert with all of those cannabinoids working together and making the low doses more effective. Whereas the higher the dose, you have what some people, mainstream people, would say the negative side effects of high doses of THC from edibles or smoking or whatever, including paranoia and, those things. Hi all, MDM Niles, welcome. Yes, we are just talking about getting high and or euphoric. That's a side effect. Euphoria is a side effect.
Well,
What's
for
wrong
some
with that
people, that's what they're going for.
Right.
Doctors call those people recreational users.
Recreational users, yeah.
I'd like to have a private, more in-depth debate with those doctors who say that, because I call that a medical use as well. I mean,
well, if it's a psychiatric use, if it's using,
maybe we could have a panel of psychiatrists.
We can do that now.
And
we can do panels.
Internists.
That's all you can do.
Oh,
Cannabis Sativa jumping in. Hey, Mr. Sativa.
Wow.
CBD, CBG, Delta 8, Delta 9, THC, and THC blend for me today.
Nice.
That's interesting. How'd you blend that all together? Is it a plant specifically, or are you?
It's probably tinctures and flowers.
It's up there in Massachusetts. Great podcast. If you don't listen to Cannabis Sativa, I am Cannabis Sativa. Please join in and support over there. Also, Vegan Metro mentioned Dave, try some live resin shatter. We did have some live. We had live resin. We had live resin last week that we tried with the dabber. You enjoyed very much. Actually, we both enjoyed that very much. It was very good. Live rosin is awesome, and probably one of the cleanest ways to get concentrated cannabis. Brian says a device I got is different one. It's a dry herb vaporizer that I wanted to try. It's like the Snoop Dogg G unit, but it's camo DJK. What does that mean? DJK. I don't know what that is.
Something, I don't know.
But there's, and we didn't get the name of that vaporizer. We should ask Dr. Tischler what was the name of that vaporizer we used.
We should. I said
we didn't know what that's because we have a what do we have? We have a PAX, which is quite nice.
But it doesn't have a digital reader.
But it
blah,
doesn't
blah,
have a
blah.
digital reader.
That looks a little more sophisticated.
It's just like 3 levels.
Vegan Metro mentions that recreational users, as if you could eat an orange to get vitamin C, but you don't get it for some reason if you just enjoy oranges.
Right. That's yes. I Jones on oranges so I can overdose on vitamin C so I can get healthy.
Right.
Well, it's like the wolf peach. But you don't. And it's interesting. It's also, I think, the idea of what a hallucinogenic or a euphoric state is for cannabis users is often misunderstood, particularly in the medical world.
Yeah.
People go into, they call them psychiatric breaks or incidents or whatever, but they go in because they're agitated, they're paranoid, and after a while they calm down and they're fine. But I have never hallucinated on cannabis. No matter how high of a dose or how high I have been.
No. Or even with alcohol. Or maybe that's just us. Hey, anybody in the chat, all y'all are a bunch of heads. Tell me, has anyone hallucinated with cannabis?
We're talking visual. It's just it's the idea of
I should have asked.
You're stoned. Oh, they're stoned. We always used to get that. Remember, we always used to get that. It's like, oh well, they're stoned. They do little side comments from Fam that would say, Fam and friends would say, oh well, there's Dave and Chela. They're stoned. But it's just it's weird, the perception of what because and I say that because in our most recent podcast, which we're going to listen to very shortly, before we get into the news, you don't hallucinate on 5 milligrams.
Wait. The definition of hallucination is an experience involving the apparent perception of something not present. So maybe super straight people who can't see beyond what they can see aren't able to perceive things that you might be able to perceive or think about when you have been using cannabis.
Well, it's certain. I mean, it definitely.
Maybe that's what they mean by hallucinate.
It opens up the windows of perception, if you will, and you start to notice things. You start to become more aware of things like colors, like
how intensely beautiful the light is in
nature,
the tree.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that a hallucination?
Is that a hallucination, or is that just a broader, connection? Same with mushrooms. I mean, I haven't done my hero's dose, so I'll let you know. I'll give you a trip report once that's done. But from microdosing or even recreational dosing of psilocybin, it's just I don't think I could say I've ever really hallucinated. I've laughed for hours.
Oh yeah, I've cried for hours.
And stared at stuff and amazed by colors and stuff. But that's a state for sure. It's an altered state. It's a great one. And of course, more and more research and investment and looks into psilocybin and other psychedelics for therapy and general health. Is very exciting.
I want to read a book called Vitamin Weed.
Oh, yeah, vitamin. We haven't
read
I
want to read that. I haven't read that yet.
I'm getting into a lot more now. The entangled life about fungus and mushrooms in general. Mushrooms are just so fascinating in general. All of the mushrooms. I'm reading a section on truffles. Truffles are freaking fascinating.
And they sell for big
So
money.
fascinating. Oh, it's just truffles are amazing. And I mean, mushrooms. Basically, it's highly sexual.
Oh, really?
Mushroom propagation is highly. There's a lot of bounce going on underneath the dirt. It's really fascinating. Jilly Love, the magic medicine of reconnection to nature. That's right. Exactly. Hello and welcome. We are so looking for. We are keep threatening to take this on the road, and we have in the past, and we may do so on a long-term basis, or at least a short long-term basis, to reevaluate our lives. And because we're going to be making movies soon, so we figured, well, why not go on the road, meet a few people, hang out if they're comfortable. And Jilly Love is on the list of people we want to hang out with.
Yeah, we're going to see about maybe camping. Like if we bring our own tent and sleeping place, maybe we can camp on some friends' properties, because I've met quite a few people who live in Humboldt, and I feel like I should go visit. And also we have a friend in Gold Beach and family in Sacramento, and then
use your outdoor showers
outdoor showers, all that good stuff. So,
but anyway, yes, it is. Blaster Master, welcome. It is true. It is not quite 420 here in California, but we are, trying not to fit into any pigeonholes and categories, and I don't know why we're starting at 4 o'clock. We're just doing it. We always kind of started the green room at 4 o'clock and just played cheesy YouTube music.
That's why.
But
because I wanted to eliminate the cheesy YouTube music.
Okay, there you go.
I wanted to eliminate the cheesy YouTube music and 20-minute lag from when we start, because when you see a show, like as a TV watcher, when I see a show that starts at a certain time, I expect it to start at that time. And if I hear 20 minutes of cheesy YouTube music before the show starts, it makes me wonder, is that really part of the show? So that's why I said that we should start at 4, but obviously I didn't explain it.
Well, it's like Expert Joints, their show that they do up in Canada. At 4 o'clock they start, but it's kind of like behind the scenes, all that. There's still content. It's not just music. And then at 4:20 is the official start, right? So, but yeah, I get it. My thought was we start early, so that time is used to promote the live video that's happening. While it's live, you see, with the countdown going, and then at 4:20 everybody's there. But it never seemed to work out. So. We're flying by the seat of our pants, making it up as we go,
evolving and figuring it out.
And one thing I did here is that the live streams need to be longer rather than shorter, and the videos need to be shorter rather than longer. That's like the general concept.
Oh, interesting.
Because live streams, people come to hang out with you live and be live with you, and they like it to be longer. Whereas videos, they like to pop in and out, see the video, get out. So your 9-minute sweet spot there is. For videos, and live streams are supposed to be long. So we have no problem doing long live streams.
No problem.
But you know what time it is, Chela?
4:18.
It's getting close. It's 4:18. So we should, if you are getting ready for that magic hour, it's coming up.
Is that when we're going to start the episode?
That's when we'll start the episode. How about that?
Okay.
That's a good idea. We can start the new episode of Cannabis Helps Dementia podcast. And then when we get back from that...
Talk about the news?
We're going to be talking about the news, which includes, of course, that Forbes article talking about just that subject. And, of course, Abby Rosner writing about our podcast, a launch of our podcast in Forbes back on May 1st. And then this new article being penned by Abby, Ms. Rosner, who covers cannabis and seniors for Forbes, talking about Dedi Meiri and his comments about Alzheimer's research with cannabis, which was not such a big topic for him last time we spoke to him. But apparently his lab is doing some cutting-edge stuff that he's been, of course, his focus has been on cancer, but his lab is doing many, many things, as I say, exploring the endocannabinoid system and many other things. So our podcast just happens to be apropos to what's going on. And as a matter of fact, in Denver this week, the city of Denver has issued a medical marijuana research and development license specifically for Alzheimer's, and a product being developed by a company in Denver, and we've talked about
that before, and they're moving forward slowly and slowly.
They've been approved by the city, so now they get to plant the plants and get to start the medicine trials later on once the plants develop. But we'll talk about that story. Thanks everybody for joining in. We're going to get into the new episode of Cannabis Helps Dementia.
Smoke them if you got them.
It's 4:20. Spark them up. What are you smoking? Where's that dab? Oh, it's over there.
I guess I could dab.
I'm going to finish this bowl of Harley Sue. Fill up another bag of Harley
Happy
Sue.
Father's Day to all the fathers.
Happy Father's Day to the dabbing daddies out
Dabbing
there,
daddies.
and non-dabbing daddies as well, because all dads deserve a wish on Father's Day.
Even pet dads. Like
Even
you.
pet dads, like me. That's
You're
right,
a great
I'm
pet dad. To your boy, Jackpot.
Yeah, it's my boy.
And you're the girl, Moo Face in heaven.
That's right.
Oh, pure
That was our
positive
first. That
energy.
was our first baby, our first child. Jilly loves plants. Are 7 feet high already.
Oh,
See, now that's the thing. You want some?
We gotta
you want
go
some?
see
You want
them.
some trimmigrants?
we gotta go
We'll
see
come up
them.
for this. We'll come up for trimming season. That's
We
what
gotta
we
go
gotta do.
see them.
August, right?
We gotta go see them.
That's right.
Okay, yeah, everybody says it's all LSD is the
Right.
hallucinogenics. Now, maybe I need to ask the doctor next time I speak with her what she means by hallucinate. What does that mean?
You mean this Dr. Yafai?
Yeah, I love her, and I'm going to talk to her very soon, so I'm going to ask her, what does she mean by hallucinate?
Thank you, Dan, Cannabis Sativa, for the Father's Day. Happy Pet Father's Day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I am a very good pet daddy.
You are a great pet daddy.
My cat was the love of my life, but next to my wife.
Oh, no, he was right the first time.
And we had her for 18 years.
Yeah.
And of course, my instruction was, I'm not going to have a cat unless she can go to the bathroom on the toilet. And Chela said, no problem. We can, or no litter box, I said. And you said, we can train her to the toilet. And I said, show me. And we did. And never had a problem for 18 years.
She was a foundling, and she worked her way into your heart overnight. She was a special girl.
Yes, she
Anyway.
was. So happy Father's Day
happy
to whoever
Father's
you are
Day.
father to, including those baby girl plants.
Yep.
You are fathering
Plant
Brian.
parent.
Plant parents. They need nurturing too. I'm soon to be a gourmet edible mushroom daddy soon too. I hope. Now that our other project is done, we can start that project, and I can start
Yes.
growing my edible mushrooms.
Totally.
Because apparently we're going to have to learn how to grow our own food in the future.
Near
And,
future.
that's going to be what's that?
Near future.
The near future, yes. The farm outside is doing quite well. The zucchinis are coming in. It's quite amazing. It was like Insta-farm. It was hilarious. But yeah, everybody's doing it. Vegan Metro, I honestly wanted to have a hallucinogenic effect with cannabis. The first time I used it, didn't know what the high would be like. About 10 highs in, I gave up on seeing pink elephants. Yeah, a lot of people don't get high on their first time either. And then they're like, nah,
Yeah.
it didn't do anything for me. It takes a while you have to you got to get your receptors going. And then it's like, oh
Right.
yeah, bring it, baby. And I'll bet you people who have healthy endocannabinoid systems don't necessarily get high right away too. Maybe they don't need it.
Maybe that's why
You know?
people don't get high
Yeah.
the first few times.
Maybe.
Maybe. I wish we were scientists, but that's not
But
in the
that's not
cards
us
this time.
But I'll tell you who is a doctor and a clinician and doing some of her own research is Dr. Sherry Yafai,
Yes.
who is a VP, one of the co-VPs of the Society of Cannabis Clinicians.
Some
which,
of you
course-
might already know her because we've done work with her before. Last year, we helped her with a conference that she put on in Century City, and I think we showed some of that, didn't we?
We did, and it's actually we may have showed a clip or two
Yeah, a
from
clip
it.
or two.
But it was a great conference talking about the laws and the state of cannabis medicine, and Dr. Yafai gets into that with us a little bit on this podcast, and you're going to hear a little bit about the history of prohibition, which is great and very timely, and the racist history of why we're here with cannabis. So we do talk about some timely issues, and as well as some of what needs to happen here in California with regards to patients, because of course Prop 64 did some damage to patient access here in California and all over the country. It's been damaged, and now that all of these politicians and states are looking for recreational cannabis and taxation of cannabis to save them in their perilous economic times, does that mean you want to tax medicine more, not just recreational? Anyway, we talk about all those subjects. How Dr. Yafai is using cannabis. How you can talk to her, get a hold of her. It's a great interview, and here you go. Enjoy the next episode of Cannabis Helps Dementia podcast, which you can find on all of your podcast servers. And if they're not, tell us. We'll get it there. But it's there. It's on iTunes, iPod, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, like Joe Rogan, and of course Anchor FM /Cannabis Helps Dementia, where you can leave us a message as well as support the podcast and listen. So here you go. Here's our latest episode with visuals for Cannabis Helps Dementia podcast. Enjoy. We'll see you on the other side for the cannabis news.
Why don't you get wise, get up and get out, get rid of that frown that's been dragging you down, and get up in the air. Just pretend that you can fly. You'll never know if you can till you try.
Hi, and welcome to Cannabis Helps Dementia. I'm Chela.
I'm Dave, and right up front, we'd like to say that we're not doctors or medical professionals, and nothing you hear in this podcast should be considered medical advice.
Right.
Yeah, we're not experts, but throughout this podcast series, you'll hear from doctors, nurses, research scientists, administrators, other caregivers, and people living with dementia about how cannabis helps.
Like it did for our family.
That's right.
After my mom was diagnosed with dementia, we were thrust into family caregiving and became fierce advocates for people living with dementia,
Including their access to cannabis medicine. Dr. Yafai is an emergency medical physician who transitioned into cannabis-based medicine. In 2017, after adult use marijuana laws had passed in California, Dr. Yafai opened her private cannabis clinic, the Relief Institute, where she sees patients referred by physicians for cannabis education and treatment. Roughly 75% of her patients are over the age of 50 and prefer to use non-smokable cannabis products.
Dr. Yafai is the co-vice president of the Society of Cannabis Clinicians, the director of research and development at High Sobriety, a member of the UCLA Cannabis Initiative, and speaker for UCSD Center for Medical Cannabis Research. In 2018, she was accepted as an adjunct professor at John Wayne Cancer Institute, working with cannabis and cancer research.
Dr. Yafai works to educate physicians, clinicians, and other healthcare providers on the most up-to-date clinical data and research in the field of cannabis.
And we are so excited to be talking with Dr. Yafai about how cannabis helps dementia. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you for having me. This is such a great venture to go on with you both.
Awesome. Thank you. So we all live in LA, and it's a very dynamic time, to be sure. The thing is that no matter what else is happening in the world, dementia doesn't care. It marches on. And people in relationship with dementia don't usually have the luxury of choosing what to focus on. Dr. Yafai, can we talk about how cannabis helps ease anxiety in people living with dementia? Maybe tell us about some of the mechanisms by which cannabis helps to relieve anxiety.
Sure. So what we're seeing generally in the clinic today is a variety of different things. So the question becomes, which chemical is helping ease anxiety? And for each individual, we've seen that it's a little bit different. There's some studies and research out there that looks at CBD very specifically as the major chemical component as quieting anxiety. There are some studies that are looking at THC as the major component to quieting anxiety. And what we see, what we know is that everybody responds to this a little bit differently. So part of that is also what we're allowed to do research on. And this is a really challenging time for a lot of scientists and physicians right now, because we keep wanting to go to the scientific literature to say, okay, let's prescribe or let's recommend, chemical A or chemical B or a combination. And we're really stuck because the federal government has created this really awkward place where we can't do great research or gather great data because of the rules and regulations there. So one of the studies that we're looking to do right now, and I think I mentioned this to Chela before, is looking at anxiety in patients with Parkinson's disease. And Parkinson's disease and dementia actually tend to be a little bit intertwined, because we know that Parkinson's patients have a higher tendency or rate of dementia than the average individual. We also know that Parkinson's patients have a higher tendency towards anxiety, and that sometimes anxiety can come up about 5 to 10 years before your Parkinson's diagnosis. So all of a sudden, in your 40s and 50s, you're now dealing with a lot of anxiety issues that usually in your 40s and 50s, it's not the time where people get diagnosed with new onset anxiety. So now we're taking a look and moving forward, hopefully, with a study looking at CBD very specifically as a means to control anxiety, specifically, again, in Parkinson's patients or Parkinson's-related anxiety. So it's really nice in dementia to be able to use something during the daytime where we can look and see if we can help patients with dementia control this mild anxiety that they all kind of tend to exhibit. Because sometimes they look around themselves and they don't know where they are, they don't know who they are, they don't know who they're with, and that can be anxiety provoking in anyone.
Sure, yeah. We've recently heard that CBD in low doses can be stimulating in some people. What do you know about that?
Absolutely. I refer to CBD as like having a cup of decaf coffee. That's my usual analogy because I do find it to be awakening, and that it tends to be, I think of, if we think of sativa and indica, those kind of ideas of what cannabis makes you feel like, sativa tends to be a lower THC content and maybe some more CBD in it. Whereas indica tends to be, a heavier THC content with some other terpenes, linalool, limonene, those other things that tend to be more calming or sedatives. But yes, CBD absolutely can be awakening, even if you think of it as calming your pain, that makes you feel lethargic and makes you feel like you can't get up and move. We have patients with arthritis who are like, I don't want to get up and walk because my joints hurt by the end of the day. So it just makes me feel a little bit more tired. But when they use CBD-based products, we find they can get up, they can move more, and they feel energized just by means of being able to do those things.
And there seems to be a lot in the press right now about arthritis and possibility of using CBD, and it sounds like that really might be, although I suppose it has the anti-inflammatory properties of it, but that sort of disassociative stimulating effect that gets you through the pain is maybe part of it too, right?
Correct. So there's a really great mouse model that took a look at arthritic mice. And what they did was they took a look at, I believe, 4 parts, if I remember correctly. One was the size of the joint. So I'm showing you like the circle diameter of the joint. And then there was also the amount of pain that the mice were in by means of movement. And then afterwards, they unfortunately always sacrifice these mice. And then they take a look at the actual joints and the inflammatory markers in the joint. And on all of those parameters, they used topical CBD actually in mice. And in those mice, they found a great reduction in all 3 of those parameters. So they could say with confidence, at least on preclinical models, that CBD is very helpful in mice models of arthritis. And with my patients as well, things like a topical CBD combined with an oral CBD does really well for a lot of arthritic patients. And I like to consider it as sandwiching the pain. So you can get around it both from your blood and then from the top where you get really into the joint where there's not a lot of great blood flow sometimes, especially with arthritic patients. So you can try and get it to your joints from both directions.
Awesome. What sort of dose is an average dose? Is there an average dose for CBD orally for arthritis?
Chela, that's a great question. So this is a big topic of discussion. And actually, I'm going to take it back to a NIDA-based discussion. So the National Institute of Drug Abuse recently put out an article and said, I believe it was Laura Gold-Cal, if I'm not mistaken. She put out an article and said, hey, do we need a standardized dose for THC, CBD? Do we need to have these kind of standardizations and dosages? And absolutely we do. Just like we have standardized doses for Tylenol for pediatrics, acetaminophen for adults, and any sort of NSAIDs for adults and children. And we need to really draw a line and say, hey, for pediatrics, we really need to go weight-based dosing like we do almost all other medications. Whereas for adults, we can really have a little bit more of a window. We need to have discussions about weight versus gender. We know Ziva Cooper has done a lot of really good research, and I believe she's undergoing another research grant-based approved research on gender differences. So women absorb this differently than men do. We absorb it differently with and without food. So with food, you absorb more of it. Without food, and a lot of a lot of people on the internet and a lot of the general public who are cannabis aficionados, they all say the same thing, it definitely hits me after I eat, X, Y, or Z.
Like the mango myth.
Right. A lot of these myths are based, loosely on something, right? Some kind of truth. Right. And so, there's a reason why it's mixed into chocolate, right? Mm-hmm. It's a nice fatty base oil, a nice fatty based product, and we absorb it better with fatty based foods. So that's a really great reason to use chocolate as your base, right? There's a reason why it's not mixed into Quaker oats, right? It's because it's not going to get absorbed. And trust me, people have been trying this out, left and right in every which way possible, because the best part about cannabis is the fact that we have millions of people who have been putting in their own creative juices in this and have really been bringing up the game without us even trying, right? Without even having scientists involved for so many decades and centuries, we've really been able to get to this point where, hey, there's a reason why, we can say actually that CBD, if you've kind of overdosed or taken too much THC, maybe you should try having a little bit of CBD tincture on top, and it'll dampen the effects of the THC. I mean, I first read that idea on some blog post somewhere. And in fact, you see it play out in medicine. Right?
Really? So that's a measurable effect that you can see in people. It will counteract that paranoia or that overstimulation of from the THC.
Absolutely. And it works really nicely in all these different ratio meds where if you use 20 parts CBD to 1 part THC, you're not going to feel the THC, right?
Right.
If you use a 4-to-1 ratio, 4 part CBD to 1 part THC, you're not going to feel the THC in it. And it's because it has this dampening effect on the THC. Now, that being said, if you've taken 20 milligrams of THC and you're a novice user, and you want to try putting some CBD in you probably aren't going to be able to get enough CBD in you to counter those effects. And you probably will need a little more help than the average bear. Which in that case, I would suggest going to the emergency department and getting pharmaceutical-based medications to quiet that down.
If that's what you need, yeah. Well, that certainly seems to be what you're seeing as far as an increase in emergency room visits in the legalized states. Are these new people who are trying a little bit too much than they should, haven't gotten the right advice, and they end up with a little bit too much overstimulation and end up in the emergency room? Always go home eventually, safe and alive. But it certainly can be disconcerting if you're not used to it or not aware that it's coming, and blows many people out of the water. And it turns out, looks like Brownie Meiri might have been right all along with a little bit of chocolate brownie to get your medicine in most effectively, right?
Right, that's exactly right. So the key here is a little goes a long way.
Well, that's actually what I wanted to ask you about. We recently spoke to Eloise Thiessen, nurse practitioner, and she has been working with a number of dementia patients. And we'd like to get maybe an idea of some of your anybody specifically in your case practice. And she's been using extremely low doses to great effect as far as THC and even CBD. But THC at super low doses she is finding very beneficial. Can you talk about maybe one or two of your older patients who might be suffering from dementia and how you find their dosing and what's most effective for you and them?
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about one particular dementia patient. He was an 80-year-old gentleman, or is an 80-year-old gentleman who had recent hip surgery after he had broken his hip. And this is really common. We see dementia get exacerbated or worsened after surgical procedures. Yeah. And the anesthesia kind of leaves your mind worse for the wear afterwards. Right. And so what happened, he came back home from surgery and was up and walking, but became hyper aggressive, became very difficult, was combative and even a little bit physical with his daughter. And so it was really difficult because everyone wanted to help and it was hard to help. And it turned off his daughters from wanting to come over, and it turned off, and so it becomes more isolating. And they tried to kind of do it on their own with cannabis, and they had a really difficult time, so they came and sought some help. And what we found was very quickly you could use about, when we're talking about dosages, I find that about 20 to 30 milligrams is going to be about a standard adult-sized dosing to start for the daytime usage. But that's something really that you want to be conscientious of other medications that are involved, what else is going on in their lives, etc. And that's where the good history and physical exam comes in. And then, so we adjusted to start him on some CBD during the daytime to just give his mind a little bit of calm and peace. And then switched over to giving him a little bit of THC at nighttime. And a little bit is really, you're talking about 0.5 milligram of THC to 2 to 3 milligrams of THC.
Yeah, that's the dosing that Nurse Thiessen was talking about that was really kind of remarkable.
Yeah, right, exactly. So when NIDA, or National Institute of Drug Administration, when they're talking about, standardizing THC dosage to 5 milligrams of THC, we have to be able to say, hey, that may be for a 20-year-old a standard recreational dose to get them to hallucinate, get them to feel good, get them drunk, right? In essence, because that's what they're looking for. Right,
some type of intoxicating effect.
Right, because that's what a 25-year-old, let's keep it within legal limits, a 25-year-old is looking for. But when you're talking about an 80-year-old with dementia, you do not want them to hallucinate. You do not want them to be unstable on their feet or feel wobbly or feel drunk, because they will fall and injure themselves. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's where we really have to create this divide between what are we talking about medically and what are we talking about recreationally. And we need to create an understanding that the two are not the same.
Mm. Certainly, it has to do with probably intent and goals, essentially. And it's just, I find it fascinating that, if compare, they love to compare cannabis with alcohol, and, it should be regulated like alcohol. But, nowhere in the world, I guess back in the day, people were like, oh, alcohol is good for you, use it for this. But it's like, and they still are. But here we are, if you use this tiny amount of dose, it's medicinal value. But if you want to have a good time, you just, add this much to it. This experience, you get this. And they're both beneficial to some degree, whether it's relieving anxiety or, you're getting that euphoria that it lifts your life, or gets you to a point where you're no longer agitated and you can sleep, and you can, and we also got that information that, you don't necessarily want all dementia patients on a high dose of THC, especially at certain points of the dementia, where they're already being challenged by stuff going on in the brain that's not necessarily normal that they can understand.
Them hallucinating because it may make them feel even more agitated and even more aggressive. Right. And so going back to this patient of mine, the best outcome of this was that we got him to a place where he was feeling good, not being physically aggressive with his daughters, and they could rekindle their relationship and really allow for him to have more of a normal interaction with his intimate family.
That's so important.
It was such a blessing. And then at the same time, we could limit the amount of psychoactive medications like Haldol, like Ativan, like Benadryl, where these things are, they would knock him out for hours on end, and the family didn't love that either. And I mean, nobody does, right? You don't want mom or dad to be gorked. You want them to be at their best.
And falls too. Falls are part of that as well.
I'm sorry, could you tell us again what dosing this particular patient was using?
Sure. So he was on roughly 30 milligrams of CBD about 3 times a day, and about 1 milligram of THC at nighttime.
1 milligram, that's amazing.
Yeah, so he just needed kind of a touch to help him fall asleep and just not get agitated. Yeah. So I mean, and that's the key is figuring out, I always say the whole idea of a little is start slow and go slow, or the other idea is a little is good, a lot is better, is only for recreational users. That idea that the cannabis industry has been propagating is really just for recreational users, because otherwise we really don't want patients on a lot because of exactly the things we've mentioned: falls, hallucinations.
Definitely not our patients.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other options too are there's these nice ratio mixes, right? So we have some dementia patients who are in hospice or are dealing with end-of-life issues.
Yeah.
And then it becomes another question or another layer. Do we want them using Ambien every night? Do we want them knocked out stone cold so that they can't interact with their family members, or the caregivers who are helping them out? A lot of times they don't like patients to be gorked or drooling or sedated all day, because then you do develop some nighttime issues about them not being able to sleep at night. So we want our family members, our patients, we want everybody to be awake during the day, interactive, moving. We want them exercising. We want them engaging with other people to enhance all those other endorphins, right? All those other things that give us happiness and bring to life good things.
Yeah.
And then at night to be able to get good, restful sleep. Mm-hmm. Now, nighttime THC is another hotly debated button. People always say, oh, well, you can use CBD for sleep. And I know there's a lot of conflicting research out there, and there's a lot of conflicting discussions amongst us as cannabis providers as to what's the best way to do this. And I think that is still going to be something that we're going to continue to need really good scientific evaluations, because there's a lot of individual discussions going on, and a lot of, what's the right word here? A lot of manufacturing of data to say my product is better for this.
Right.
So that, and we don't want that to cloud the issue. Whereas that wasn't necessarily clouding the issue beforehand, because people were just using flower from the earth. Now we have a lot of product lines.
We have isolates. We have my isolate's better than your isolate. Mine's nano. Yours is not. All this fancy technology that's going to save us.
Mine is whole spectrum. Yours
right.
Right.
Hemp, not hemp. And then you've got one of the trends that I kind of am seeing is that to use CBD alone, like look at Epidiolex, you have to use it in such high doses to make it effective that then it starts to become that toxic medicine that it might create problems.
That's right. And so it's all, and we talk about this all in isolation, but what I find is that when you hit, I'll give you 40, 50, 60, you're probably taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 medications on your individual genetics and predisposition and everything else that goes along with it. And depending on that, how is that going to interplay with cannabis? I find that we don't talk about that enough. We only talk about this in isolation. But hey, maybe you have, my dementia patients are never on nothing. They're on at least a blood pressure medication.
What was your patient that you were talking about earlier on, the one who had the hip replacement?
Right, so he was on blood pressure medication. He was on some Haldol, and that was one of the medications we wanted to reduce because it wasn't beneficial to him. Right. And he was throwing away his pills, so he wouldn't take his pills that he needed. He was in pain as well, so he had some narcotic pain medication that he was refusing to take as well. But he wasn't able to move because he was still in pain. So it's being able to adjust some of these medications. So no, you don't have to take your narcotic if you're in pain. You can use this in place, and we can supplement this. Yeah. But at the same time, not everyone's telling their patients this because they're not all mindful of cannabis being on board. Yeah.
Right.
So one of the things that we need to really educate our practitioners on, and our physicians and our medical providers who are writing regular prescriptions, is, hey, listen to your patients. If they're planning on returning to use cannabis, this is important, and you want to reduce the amount of narcotics that you're prescribing for them, because I'm going to mention Ziva Cooper again. She's done some really great research. Ziva Cooper did a great article on showing that you could use 50% of a narcotic plus THC and have a synergistic effect on pain.
Awesome.
That's, every doctor should be on board that. And I know the pharmaceutical industry is not going to be on board it. And that's probably because there's a lot of incentive there with doctors to not look at those other options and cutting down on pharma. That is still huge. Go ahead.
Why?
I'm going to step in for just a moment. So it's not about incentives for doctors. It's just lack of knowledge.
Right.
Why is it that there's a lack of knowledge? Why aren't they teaching this in school? Right.
Because we're not teaching this in medical school. We're not teaching because it's a Schedule I drug. I mean, let's go back to what's going on in the outside world today, not to date when we're recording this, but we are actively having, protests, riots, uprisings of it, and the Black Lives Matter movement, which is, near and dear to my heart. And one of the reasons it's near and dear to my heart is because of the fact that the cannabis movement came out of this. Yeah. And let me backtrack and explain all of this. So in the early 1900s, the reason why cannabis or marijuana was prohibited was directly related to African Americans and Hispanics, specifically Mexicans. Okay, so let's go back and talk about why this all happened. In the early 1900s, like 1901, we were using cannabis in pharmaceutical medications. I think Eli Lilly was using
at its own farm.
And it's right, and their own farm, and it was actively being put in, sleep medications, cough syrup, everything, and then some. And then around the 1920s, we now have Mexican immigrants. We have a lot of movement in Black America. And what happens is that we start labeling cannabis as marijuana, which is the term that Mexican immigrants use for cannabis. And what we start seeing is there's all this propaganda about how it makes Mexicans crazy. It makes African American males violent and prone to raping white women. This is where all of this centers around. And we created this sense of, and this really horrible idea that African American males are violent, aggressive, and rapey. I don't know a better word for that. And that Mexicans are crazy. And one of the reasons why is because of cannabis.
Right.
And so all of a sudden we see the Marijuana Prohibition Act coming into play in the 1920s. And all of this stems from complete and utter racism. And it has come through even till today, where we're seeing these things open up, and we're seeing recreational and medical laws open up in all these different states. We now have 11 states that are recreationally legal to use cannabis, and we have 33 states that have both some type of medical laws for cannabis.
Right.
What is still going on today, and there's this great UCLA research on this, is that African Americans are still 3.6 times more likely to get arrested and put in jail for possession of marijuana.
Yep.
And this plays into, Black Lives Matter, because why are we imprisoning people? We can imprison white Americans, we can imprison anyone, right, for this exact same things, but we're not seeing it. We're seeing it disproportionately done towards our Black American companions, our Black American citizens, and this is not okay. This is something that has propagated the idea of, I'm disheartened to report this, but one of the things I hear is, George Floyd died because he was intoxicated, and we see plenty of people. I work in the ER. I see people come in drunk, intoxicated, high. You name it, I've seen it. Night and day, we take care of those people because we understand that this is, number one, an illness, right? This is, number two, it can be accidental. And number three, it's not hurtful to other people, right? It's hurtful to oneself. It's not hurtful to somebody else.
Yeah, you ever seen Philly after they win a big game? There's a lot of drunk, angry white people or happy white people out in the streets causing mayhem. That's so, right. And a couple of points on what you mentioned is, and that, tying it to what's going on this week, public consumption of cannabis, although it may be legal in 11 states, public consumption is illegal. So if you're at these marches, if you're at these things, someone brought up, said, they're going to use that excuse. If you're smoking weed, they're going to use that excuse to detain you or otherwise use their police powers. And also, Alex Berenson, one of our favorite prohibitionists currently, it was directly correlating cannabis use to what's going on in the streets right now, which is complete nonsense and a continuation of how we got to where we're at today. So you have both points taken to see where we're at. And policing in general was created to control black slaves that are based or non-slaves, to control the escaped slaves and the black population. So we have a history of where policing came from, expanded in the drug war. You hadn't even gotten to the drug war in the 70s.
Let it go.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much that we could talk about, and how this is all interrelated into one another, and how unfortunate it is. And I'm so torn with everything that's going on about how to help and how we can all be a part of this. But I think the most important thing we can do is acknowledge, where this all came from, and how it's changed, the perception of cannabis, how it changed the perception of marijuana, and, whose backs we're stepping on to get to where we are today. We've stepped on people's backs to get here in the cannabis industry. And it's important to acknowledge that. When I first started in all of this back in 2017, right after legalization here in California, I remember going to a big cannabis conference in downtown LA, and there were about 1,000 people, almost all white American, great people, wonderful people, but there was probably about 3 to 5 black men. There was one black gentleman that was a very famous person that was encouraging use of a brand, and then there was about 4 or 5 others. Now, I was leaving this conference, and I took an Uber back home. And in the Uber ride, we started chatting, and it was a black gentleman who was the driver, and he was like, "What were you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, well, interestingly enough, I was at a cannabis conference." And he said, "Oh, you got to be careful. They'll put a black man in prison. Half my relatives have been put in prison for that stuff. So I stay as far away from it as possible." And you will never, ever hear that discussion in white America. You will never hear that kind of fear in white America about using pot, right? There's no fear about smoking pot. There's no fear about, oh, my cousin was put in jail because he smoked pot and the police caught him. I can tell you how many college friends I had who were smoking pot in high school, and there was zero fear that they would be imprisoned for it. Zero. And yet, a gentleman on the streets, just a regular old conversation, and it was palpable how his fear was around this, even though it could be beneficial to his, potential future. Yeah. As a potential medication.
Exactly. I was going to say for his health.
Yes.
Black and brown people and women are disproportionately impacted by dementia. And if we could get the propaganda broken down, the stigma broken down around cannabis, we might be able to get them more help.
Right. And I think it takes things like this podcast to shine a light on where it can be useful and where we can actually reduce other medications that are harmful to patients, right? For a lot of years, we've been talking about the opioid epidemic and the solution or a cure for the opioid epidemic. And this is staring us in the face.
Oh yeah, it's so much. There's so much science is coming through about that. Every state has.
Well, not fast enough.
I know. It's just, it's not really science. It's just the statistics of the numbers of how the opioid prescriptions are dropping in the states where it's legal and medically or recreationally. It is staring us right in the face, and it's just criminal.
Our elderly population are disproportionately at risk because they tend to have more issues that require narcotics. We've all had to implement in our hospitals, safety and precautions around using narcotics for pain, because we've seen overdoses happen even in the hospitals, even where we're being safe, because this is inherently not a safe medication, and yet we use it like it is. So, shining a light on these things again, New England Journal of Medicine and JAMA, these are 2 big scientific journals. I personally have submitted an article of a clinical case presentation where we were able to take a patient off of 180 milligrams of morphine milligram equivalent. Okay, so a lot of painkillers.
That's a lot.
60s, and they were all prescriptive medications, and using non-inhaled cannabis to take him off all of it in 3 months. Now, and then what ends up happening? So here's kind of the catch-22 of it all. The vicious cycle is that I submitted this highly scientific, through a medical doctor's office article to these 2 reputable sources. And both of them dismissed the article summarily based off the title. Okay. And the idea that we can dismiss this. And then, what ends up happening is when I talk to my colleagues, my physician colleagues, about using cannabis as an alternative for pain management, they all say the same thing. Well, where's the science? Where's the data? Where's the literature? And then it's, well, there is no data and science and literature because they won't allow us to publish it.
Yeah.
So, and then you go one step further and you say, well, on a national level, they won't allow for, more research because there's no individual case presentations and there's no clinical case studies presented in any of the literature. And you say, well, that's because the individual cases are not being allowed to be reported. So how is it that we're going to change? And at some point, someone has to say, hey, there's got to be a change here. And, I'm really thrilled to say that UC San Diego has been making these changes one article at a time. UCLA is starting to make those changes and making those waves. NYU with Dr. Yasmin Hurd is starting to make those changes. Looking at CBD for treatment for heroin withdrawal. So we're starting to see some of this data and literature. In Germany, there's actually some great research coming out about mice models and Alzheimer's disease and maybe preventatively using cannabis and THC very specifically for dementia treatment. So anticipating dementia and preventing it from even coming on to the same degree. And the most interesting part about that data is, hey, you don't have to get these mice high all day, every day. You can just use small dosages, number one. Number two.
Like a vitamin.
Right. Or the other idea is, hey, maybe we need to talk about brains being different as you age. Maybe the young brain is different from the middle-aged brain, which is different from the elderly brain. So maybe we need to start talking about our brain doesn't stay static after 21 till 100, right? I mean, like nothing else in our bodies do. My boobs sure don't. So that's one example. But,
on a side note.
I mean,
everything changes.
That our bodies, stay the same from the age of 0 to 20, or are growing between 0 and 21. And then after 21, we stay stagnant or static is false.
And your brain is right. As soon as you're like 20, your brain is already starting to shrink.
Right. And so you're getting this idea of like, maybe we need to take a second look at the second phase of life, right? Maybe we have phases to life and our bodies and our organs and our different structures aren't just, one shot fits all. And so maybe we need to take one consideration for up until 21. We need to take a different consideration of maybe let's throw out a number, maybe after 45, maybe that, I don't know.
For me, it was 42, just saying.
Right. And maybe we just need to start taking a second look at these things. And maybe we need to start throwing ideas out there because we can't progress unless we have ideas that will be heard. And these ideas need to start percolating and we need to start having discussions and we need to start getting these ideas to the right people. Right people need to hear them. Yeah. And we're starting to get a little bit of that and we're starting to hear some responses, but it's not there yet.
Well, the powers that be have the ears of the prohibitionists and the pharmaceutical companies, as opposed to the really knowledgeable clinicians and folks that are actually trying to create educational programs for clinicians and, certified programs so they can actually get the knowledge that they need and spread it out to the people who need it. So, yeah, we've got this wall of information. Just recently this week, they were talking about how they've, under the Trump administration has been secretly working on ways to make sure prohibition stays in there, so we don't have their ear. We need to get in there. We need to get somebody in there to actually give them some real information, and ironically,
personal
experiences. Yes, exactly. Kim Kardashian needs to be making some phone calls, about,
what you're talking.
Right. It's exactly. Why not? I could just see Trump coming out and saying, look, CBD cures the COVID. I don't know if that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing for CBD, But, I could see him saying that. But yeah, I think we need to get more knowledgeable and real clinicians that are actually using this. I mean, CanMed last year was great because, well, it was a lot of research, talking a lot about mice, which is wonderful, but there was very little clinical presentations. And this year it looks like we're going to see some clinical presentations on dementia, which is super exciting. So I think really the practical use of it on the ground with doctors like you and institutions. Chela, please.
The change you're talking about is descheduling, or at least rescheduling.
Well, and I'll go one step further, because heroin is a Schedule I drug. We've got plenty of research on it. It's
right.
Not, right. It's not. I hear you. I'm not dismissing that at all.
No.
I totally agree that we need to deschedule it. But even in the states where it's recreationally legal, we still don't have really good, powers that be. So here in the state of California, the Bureau of Cannabis Control has got nothing to do with medical use. Literally nothing to do with medical use. On a committee of 22 people, right, on their consulting committee, they've got 2 doctors, okay, both of whom have, I venture to say how much clinical experience they have, okay? So we need to start even here, right? Even here in California, where we think we're super progressive, and we've got no medical protections in place here in California for patients. So patients are still paying 25 to 30% taxes on their medication, where they pay 0 taxes on a pharmaceutical prescription medication.
It's been medically legal since 1996, yet our state schools don't teach about it.
And so it's like, it's all of these layers. We have, you have to go to the public health facility to get a second recommendation, basically from the public health department, in order to get a decrease in taxes. What other medication do I make patients jump through so many hoops? After I prescribe Viagra, do I then make them go to the public health office and have them file with the state that they are using Viagra?
That would be funny. That would be funny. That would be good. That would be interesting.
Can you imagine the outrage of Viagra? I mean, which is 100% purely recreational for purposes. I mean, it is for no other reason, right? So
wow.
I mean, if we can put these things to the right analogies, right? We don't have people, even in the state of California, appropriately addressing this. The Medical Board of California, as wonderful as they are, and I really think Kim Kirchmeier has done an amazing job in terms of, allowing for a lot of cannabis flexibility, I think there's a lot of room to grow. And I think somebody has to take ownership between these 2 groups, between the Bureau of Cannabis Control and between the Medical Board of California. Somebody has to take ownership for cannabis regulations in the medical field, and nobody has.
Well, they've, 64 destroyed medical, and I'll turn it over to Chela. 64 destroyed medical. The legalization that Dennis Perone did in California destroyed it. And now what we have is in order to get a card, it's so difficult to go and get a card. It's costly. I mean, the number of qualified medical cannabis patients is like 6,000 in California, or some absurdly low number that actually have a card that saves you that taxes. So yes, absolutely, we need to fix medical in California.
What I'm afraid some medical patients might be doing to save on taxes might be going to unregulated places.
Which is all the BCC is obsessed with right now. They're hiring enforcement people to bust all these black markets that the medical people are going to because they don't want to pay the taxes.
Traditional
market, yes.
So that's, this is another important thing, is that medical patients, this doesn't get covered by insurance. Right. They're paying now, and they get expensive. So for somebody who's using, let's say, 30 milligrams of CBD 3 times a day, that's what 3069. That's 90 milligrams of CBD a day in a typical 1,000 milligram bottle. Right, you're going through that in roughly 10 to 12 days. And that costs anywhere from $75 to $100. So you're talking about medication that now they're going to use $300 worth of medication in a month.
Right.
Most people, that breaks their pocket. I mean, listen, if I was going to use a medication $300 a month, I'd think twice about it. I would go with the Ativan pill that's $2 with my copay. I can I'd go with the Norco that's $5 with the copay for pain.
Right.
Why would you necessarily go use something else that costs so much? And so it's really challenging for my medical patients. And it's important that this is brought to the forefront of the discussion, right? We don't just want to deschedule or we want to do it the right way. We want to have our medical professionals at the front lines of this and talking about how it's beneficial to their patients, but also how they are overall healthier and how this is difficult to maintain because of the cost. And so this is something that all goes hand in hand.
And then again, also disproportionately impacts Black and brown people.
Yes.
With less access to cannabis.
Yeah. And poverty. Yeah. If you can't afford it, it's automatically it's limiting who can use it.
Yes, absolutely.
Dr. Sherry, you're such a wealth of information. I really appreciate you coming and joining with us today. I hope to have you back again. I don't want to take you any longer.
Yeah, we could sit here all day.
We really, really. It's not easy to find a healthcare professional with this specialized knowledge. Do you take telehealth patients?
Yes, I take telehealth patients. I have patients as far as New York, down to Florida, and up to about San Francisco.
Awesome.
We have had a couple international patients come in and have just educational discussions. But yes, we take telehealth patients, especially now during quarantine. We've optimized our telehealth care. So by all means, if you have questions, concerns, if you want to do this better, if you want to learn how to minimize your medications and use this as an alternative base, hemp CBD is legal in all 50 states, which is such a bonus and advantage, especially for patients who want to start and don't know where to start.
And where can they find you?
Oh, great. Thanks. Thanks for prompting. You can find me at the Relief Institute. Relief is spelled with a leaf, RELEAF. So that's www.thereliefinstitute.com. Or you can email me directly at Sherry, SHERRY, at MDRelief, RELEAF.com, or 310-475-2626. We look forward to helping you out.
Awesome. And we'll have all those links in our show description as well.
Great. Dr. Sherry Yafai, thank you so much for all of your work and for joining us on Cannabis Helps Dementia. And we hope definitely to talk to you again, especially as the results of you get your study going, and as the new results come in from Germany. We'd love to talk to you about that as new information comes in and we learn more about how cannabis can help dementia. I mean, the pandemic goes on. The people are in the streets for justice, but Alzheimer's and dementia continue as well, and people are in need in these times more than ever, especially not just people with dementia, just people that are anxious and full of anxiety. Cannabis is an option, and it's great to know that people can contact great doctors like you who know this and can guide them on their journey with plant medicine.
Cool.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you for doing this. This is great.
Of course. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for Cannabis Helps Dementia. Be sure to download and like us on Spotify, iTunes, or your favorite podcasting network.
And please share this podcast with anyone you know in relationship with dementia.
Do you want to tell your story of how cannabis helps dementia? Visit Anchor FM/Cannabis Helps Dementia to leave us a voice message, or drop us a note and connect with us on the socials.
Check out the Society of Cannabis Clinicians website to find real medical professionals familiar with cannabis medicine in your area.
Because you remember, we're not doctors.
Just family caregivers turned advocates.
And don't forget, download, like, and share what you learn. Cannabis Helps Dementia.
Why don't you get wise? Get up and get out. Get rid of that frown that's been dragging you down, and get up in the air. Just pretend that you can fly.
Till you try.
You'll never know if you can till you try. So get out in your right. Be able and strong. Give vent to that intent you've had pent up for so long. Come on up and see what it's like being out where you're
Do
free.
something that's new.
Just do something that's real unique.
That's the latest
do
episode
something that's
of
new.
Cannabis Helps Dementia. Over on Anchor FM. Anchor.fm/Cannabis Helps Dementia. You can listen right there, leave us a message, support the show, support the podcast, And find the podcast service that you listen to and you can download from. And rate, review on iTunes, Spotify, and share. Don't forget to share what you learn that cannabis helps dementia. And Dr. Sherry Yafai. Awesome. Oh, I think I changed that. Oh, yes, I did. Oh, that's a bummer. I put that new logo up because I don't know why that is out of sync now. Every time I play a video on YouTube, it goes out again out of sync. I thought I found why and I fixed it, but it didn't seem to work. So I'm not sure what's going on there. So I just put up the logo. The video, like the video from Tischler, it plays just fine if you play the video on YouTube now. So I'm
really?
I'm going to put that video up, and you can watch it with the video, and it won't be out of sync. But I know it's complete. It's so disconcerting. You can't listen.
So disconcerting.
You can't listen to what's going on about the information in the podcast because it looks like you're watching What's Up, Tiger Lily, with the dubbing. So or a Bruce Lee movie, and so the video will be up, and you will be able to see it in sync. But I don't know why it's doing it. It's something between OBS because. Going out on OBS, it looks great. I can see it's perfectly in sync, and by the time it hits YouTube and rebroadcasts, it's fazul. And we're not, I don't think. Are our lips moving the appropriate way?
I think so.
So I think the live video is fine. It's just when I play a video, and it's never done that before, so I don't know what's going on. I apologize. That was the latest episode of Cannabis Helps Dementia. So go find that over on Anchor FM or your favorite podcast service.
Or leave a review at iTunes.
Yes, rate and
Since
review.
you just heard it.
Yes, rate and review on iTunes. That will help the algorithm.
That'd be amazing.
To get the information out.
That'd be helpful.
Because it's good information. Every
Such
week we
good
talk to amazing
information.
doctors. Although I've never gotten hallucinogenic high or unable to drive high on 5 milligrams. Maybe 50 milligrams of an edible.
Well, you're you. Maybe if somebody living with dementia would have a different experience.
Absolutely.
That's why we need more research.
And older people have slower metabolisms and haven't been using it for years and years. And years.
Right.
So
maybe when I'm older, we can do a study on me or you.
But I think what are the define your terms? What does it mean?
Yeah, I should have asked. But I was caught up in the conversation.
But certainly we have heard other commentary from other doctors that the doses are low enough that that there really isn't any other measurable side effects,
right?
Other than the decrease in agitation, the end of insomnia, the all the good things that happen without all the measurable. Because you don't want people falling and that are already having trouble walking. You don't want them to be having trouble with their motor skills. So, and that will definitely happen with higher doses of THC. And we're having a discussion, of course, in the chat. The chat is also as full as a Donald Trump rally in where was it? In
Tulsa.
How'd the Second Amendment march go in Tulsa?
Yeah, does anybody know about that?
The African American Second Amendment march. There was a march that was supposed to go on in Tulsa too, yeah, it's strange they didn't shut that down with 6 members of their team with COVID. I thought it was 3 people with COVID shuts you down, doesn't it?
It makes an outbreak.
That makes an outbreak. So they went ahead with an outbreak. So that's going to be interesting to see if those 6,000 people spread COVID to people. But it was measurably empty.
Measurably empty.
We don't need to talk about that. Although Donald
moving
Trump
on.
is in the news this week, as is his cannabis policy and his new chief of staff. But you can, once again, follow that great podcast over on Anchor FM /Cannabis Helps Dementia. Also on Instagram, we can put out our cool little memes. And our in the know generation niece said our memes are great, and our little. So go check out our memes over on Instagram. I like this was one of my this is my favorite one that she said. Well, that was a good one. There's no data, science, and literature because they won't allow us to publish it.
Yeah.
All of this demonization of cannabis comes from complete and utter racism, and we're going to take a look at some of that. That was last week's. Where's the one that's really funny?
The Viagra one.
Here it is.
You got it.
What other medication do I make patients jump through so many hoops? After I prescribe Viagra, do I make them go to the public health office and have them file with the state that they're using Viagra? Excellent point, because that's what you have to do in California. You have to go to the state, stand in line, pay money, tell them you're using cannabis to get your card so you don't have to pay taxes on it.
I know, by the way, if you own a gun.
Yeah, and then you have to turn in your gun. Or, they at least...
Anybody with a federal firearms license is not allowed to own a firearm. It is against federal law. If you own a gun and have a federal firearms license, you need to double check that, because there is a question on the federal firearms license application that asks very specifically about marijuana. So if you are a firearms aficionado, or if you know any, maybe ones that are members of the NRA needs to lobby the feds and tell them to get that question off the list, because that's ridiculous.
Well, like states like Oklahoma are actually trying to change that. They're trying to pass a state law that basically says you're okay with a medical cannabis card and your First and Second Amendment rights. But, it is part of the politicization and criminalization of the cannabis plant for many, many years. And we're going to look at that from some of the news this week. But can finish up. You can follow the Cannabis Helps Dementia Twitter page as well over at Cannabis Helps. On Instagram, it is Cannabis Helps Dementia. And on Facebook, it is CHD Podcast, because you can't use the word cannabis on Facebook, strangely enough.
Yeah, if I could leave Facebook, I would.
I know.
But there's too many connections and stuff there that they got you.
It's like the mafia. Once you think they're out,
there.
suck you back in. Moving on to the news. Let's get it. There has been a lot of cannabis news. You can follow the cannabis news that I follow over on my Twitter account, which is at DC420LA. And that's my handle on all the socials, at DC420LA. But that's where I tweet my news. I don't know where you tweet, but that's where I do my tweeting. Because Twitter is one level in social chaos below Facebook. I don't know. What if somebody said, whenever I feel bad about how bad Twitter is, I go over to Facebook and I feel okay about being on Twitter. Because it's so much worse. But yeah, Twitter is not a fun place either. But I try to share the cannabis news I find, as well as some political news that I still am compelled to follow.
Yeah, what is that? I know I have a similar thing.
I don't know what it is, but
we got to fill up our day with more positive things, and then we won't have as much time for that other stuff.
Oh, that's why I wasn't on my profile.
Tyranny indeed, cannabis sativa. Tyranny indeed.
Tyranny in so many ways. So let's get into some of that news. Top of the news this week, because it concerns Alzheimer's and cannabis, and someone we have met and actually asked the question. Last year at CanMed, we met Dedi Meiri, very notable and prominent Israeli cannabis researcher and part of Dr. Moshalem's team. Raphael Moshalem, of course, the grandfather of cannabis medicine, at least the endocannabinoid system and the naming the cannabinoids anyway.
And Dr. Meiri, if you watch the documentary The Scientist, he's the one who proposed the word ananda for anandamide.
Oh, I forgot that. That's right. For our endocannabinoid, anandamide, one of them.
It's a pretty cute story.
It's certainly more poetic than 2AG.
Yes.
But
anandamide.
It turns out that not only this pertinent headline for us, notes from the cutting-edge Israeli researcher Dedi Meiri on cannabis, Alzheimer's, and dementia. Abby Rosner picking up on this quote from a webinar interview, I don't know if it was a webinar, but it was an interview from his lab, actually. And a question was asked, and we're going to play it, the question. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to play it. About what is the most exciting thing about what's going on in cannabis today, cannabis medicine, and this is the answer. This may be out of sync too. Let's see if this video is out of sync, and we'll know if it's just me or it's all the videos.
I think it's because it's a Zoom thing.
Oh, hang on.
Soon. I'll tell you what.
Quiet.
Let's rephrase that. Which areas of medicine do you think offer the most promise with cannabis, Dedi? What excites you the most?
On top of what is known and already treated, I guess, right?
Yeah, derm or psych, like what mood disorder. What do you think offers the most sort of promise with cannabis therapies?
So again, I think the most promise is the known thing, is like pain and sleep and epilepsy and anxiety and this kind of thing. But I think one of the things that is still not being treated with cannabis, and it's still a black box, but I really, really believe in it. And in my lab, I have phenomenal results. It's dementia and Alzheimer.
Okay.
So I think cannabis is activating microglia, changing things in the neurons. And I think it will, first of all, improve the quality of life of Alzheimer patient. But I think it can also help dementia, and it will be, again, it's like cancer, right? There is different types of diseases, neurodegenerative diseases, and many types of cannabis, and we need to learn to fit it. But I believe that this will be another big field. And I'm saying that after 3 years of study in my lab, I have a few neurodegenerative diseases that we're working on then, and Alzheimer is a major. We have a mice model for Alzheimer and other model for Alzheimer, and the results are very, very promising. So I think this will be a big thing.
So, I mean, I've heard more about how it improves agitation, sleep, and things like that, but I've not really considered it as actually something that can prevent dementia or help in the.
So preventing dementia, it's always a big question how you check that in humans, because you're starting with somebody that's starting to have dementia and you're treating him, and then first of all, it's many years of until you really have answers. Second, you never know if you really improve or not improve, because you never know what is the end point that this guy will reach in which years, It reminds me the beginning of the COVID-19 in Israel, when the Minister of Health stand and said, in 1 month we will have 5,500 people that need ventilizing, right? And I listened to him and I said, okay, if we will have just 90, he said, hey, you see, I have a very big success. And if there will be 2,000, said, hey, I cut half, right? So we're exactly after 1 month when he said that, and we have 93 people in Israel that are under ventilation. So now the question, did really the healthcare in Israel did the right things and prevent that, or these are just the numbers? So, and we will never have the real answer. So this is my problem to say that, again, in animal model, which is easier to measure, and I understand the mechanism why it's doing that, we have very promising results, and I think it will be a thing.
Okay.
One of the causes for dementia is the endocannabinoid. It's reducing the endocannabinoids activity. So it makes sense that cannabis will compensate on that.
So you mentioned COVID.
So dementia is a result of reduced endocannabinoid efficiency.
Yeah.
Is that what he said?
That's what he said.
That's essentially what he said.
That's what he said. He also said, which we're not playing, but if you guys go,
why are you talking about the COVID?
The migraine.
Oh, the migraine. Yeah,
we're not playing that portion.
No.
But if you guys watch the whole thing, he talks about, of course, migraine, no problem. Cannabis gets rid of migraine, of course, like it's a thing. And there is research
this week
that indicates that people who suffer from migraine are at an increased risk of dementia. And it also
I didn't realize that research was out there too.
Yeah. So I thought, okay, yeah. So that's there. Maybe anyway. So
Did you share it with me?
It's Isn't it in the normal?
Is it? Let me see.
Reduce. Oh no. Sorry. But it's true. So.
Well, yeah. Well, the normal article is referencing what David Meiri references in Israel is the study on this, that they have basically proven that cannabis use prevents migraines.
Right.
Consistent, regular
Yes.
cannabis use
Yes.
actually is proven to prevent migraines.
Yes.
And that's what the question was, what is, is there anything that has been proven that cannabis can prevent? And he says, the only thing we have is migraines. Migraines.
Well, migraines, like,
Pretty
yeah,
big
duh.
one. It's a pretty big one.
That's a big one, and I used to suffer from them. Babe, I have the thing. Should I drop it where? Facebook?
Put it in Facebook.
Okay.
You used to suffer from migraines.
Yeah, I used to suffer from migraines, and I changed my diet because I've always used loads of cannabis, and that hasn't been a thing. But I didn't use it the way I use it now. The way I use it now, I use it orally. I use it in a tincture. I use more. I have better access. I used to only smoke a little bit, and that was it. But I knew that made my headaches feel better. Eventually I figured out they were migraines, and I found some chiropractic to be helpful. But then when I started seeing my acupuncturist, who gave me the diet advice, that seems to stop them before they start most of the time. I didn't have a migraine since 2008 until April of this year. I had one, and it was, it was mild. I mean, I eventually figured out it was a migraine, so it wasn't that mild. But it was a bummer, and obviously it was related to me. I think it was related to stress because my diet was good. I think it was stress related. It's been a time. But yeah, migraine. So did you get the study?
Oh, I'm sorry.
On the Facebook? I sent it to you.
Wait. There it is.
So,
Okay, I see the link. It comes.
So this study, how it shows that dementia is linked to migraine, relates to Meiri, as well as Dr. Russo's idea that endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome can cause migraines, IBS, fibromyalgia, and Alzheimer's disease, dementia. So it's a very, very interesting time right now in the world.
They are connecting a lot of dots there, it seems.
Yeah, well, I did. I connected those dots because it's particularly...
You're connecting those dots.
It's particularly important to me, personally, what the fuck's up.
Right.
So I used to have migraines. I know that they're eased through cannabis. These doctors are saying these things about cannabis and about Alzheimer's and about migraine and IBS, which I used to have as well.
Well, that's pretty amazing. Dementia linked to previous migraine history. Midlife migraine diagnosis boosted dementia rate by 50%. Danish study.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
And if that is indeed an endocannabinol deficiency problem,
which is a whole other thing,
which
right?
Dedi seems to, in this interview that he does, he seems to intimate that they have that evidence.
Yeah.
There's definitely, I think, a connection. He also gets more into that COVID connection. And COVID sort of was his point there being that how can you tell if something is preventing Alzheimer's? You don't really know what their outcome is going to be,
right.
in 10 years, in 20 years, how their Alzheimer's would have manifested. So it's hard to, then he connected that to COVID, how they're saying, they're going to have need this many intubators, but this is how many they ended up needing. You don't really know until the end, right? So the same with Alzheimer's, how are you preventing it? Well, how were you going to progress with Alzheimer's without it, is really the question. How can you prove that? You can do it in mice models like Kate Mouse, I heard, is a really good mouse model.
She's a super mouse model.
So they do trials with mouse models, like, come up with other. We're trying to come up with other punny mouse model names.
Because we love puns, you guys.
Like puns. And Kate Mouse was the only thing we could come up with.
Yeah, Kate Mouse, like Kate Moss. You know.
I think they get that. Maybe not. I don't know. She's not prominent anymore.
Yes, Vegan Metro, it's true. THC inhibits dreaming. Vegan Metro says, I also find that I don't dream when I've had cannabis. Not sure if others find that, but it might be looked at as a treatment for nightmares. Yes, that's why it works well on PTSD.
That's right.
It is known that THC inhibits dreaming, which, I would love more studies on that. How does that impact your long-term health? If you don't dream, how does that impact you? I don't know. It's very interesting.
Study.
But I'm not stopping using cannabis because that might be some kind of weird thing in my future. I know that it benefits me so much now that I'm taking the risk.
And it's you don't remember your dreams.
I don't know. No.
Not necessarily you're not dreaming. Maybe you don't remember your dreams.
I think you don't dream. I think I've read studies that indicate that.
I think they could test that. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Hi, believe women. So I read studies that said that you don't dream when you've had THC.
I think there's a couple of studies that shows that.
Are there some studies about that, babe? Even at home, guys. Even at home.
I kid.
Hey, who's read White Fragility? Anybody? Anybody read White Fragility yet?
Speaking of, anybody
I haven't read White
Fragility?
Fragility yet, but I did order it. My niece has read it, and I'm
really?
excited to start.
Oh,
yes,
that's cool.
She's super woke.
That the TED Talk and the one of her book introduction. I think I haven't watched the actual full TED Talk yet, but I saw the part of it was like the book.
She has a TED Talk too?
She's a TED Talk.
God,
too,
I'm so behind. You
yeah.
know what? I
Yeah, it's
haven't been
pretty
focused
powerful.
on this aspect. I've been focused on dementia. And I know all about how dementia disproportionately impacts people of color, black people, Latino, and women. And I know that how cannabis prohibition has also disproportionately impacted black and brown people. So it seems to me that black and brown people, and especially black and brown women, would be suffering the most in the dementia field because of lack of access to cannabis medicine and increased policing through cannabis prohibition. So I've been, that's sort of where our advocacy in as far as racism within the medical system and policy goes. But White Fragility, it's time for me to read it. It's time for some good introspection, and some of my friends call me one of the good ones. But
Well, you get points. You get points for that.
Whatever, some of my friends call me one of the good ones, and I still totally have so much work to do.
Oh my God.
And I'm going to start by reading White Fragility.
Well,
and I'm going to make Dave read it too.
As Green Entrepreneur covers this week, Black Health Matters, how cannabis can treat PTSD, anxiety, and insomnia in the African American community. As Black Americans disproportionately suffer from systematic disparities in the quality of physical and mental health care, cannabis can help. And that's a barrier sometimes, especially with the older generations, because they all have family members that have been locked up for cannabis in the drug war. Oh, I mean, that's a generalization, of course. But certainly there's a lot more disparity in people. It's like COVID. I read an article last week that not everybody. We don't know anybody personally that has suffered from COVID. But
I know one person. I went to high school with her, and she lives in Switzerland.
And
I don't know anybody in LA.
I don't know if this is true, but apparently in the Black community, everybody knows somebody who is affected by COVID.
Hey, people in the
anybody
chat.
in the chat could let us know if that's the case.
Yeah, does anybody know anybody?
Do you know anybody that has it? And what's your race? I mean, I don't know. I'm gonna do a poll, but that's been in the news. And
our sample size of 15.
As is with the fact that who in the Black community is going to volunteer for a vaccine testing program?
Fuck no.
I assume. That's been talked about in the news as well. It's not always been a good history of
between the federal government and Black people and
medicine and testing. So if it doesn't work, the vaccine doesn't test that population. What's the point of the vaccine, considering how it affects people of color more than white population?
Oh, wow.
If you look at the LA County numbers, the disparity is obvious.
Vegan Metro, I'm Black. My aunt has lost 2 friends to COVID already.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
We don't have. There's family members or close friends actually of the family
Ellen
have passed recently, but not because of COVID.
Who was Caucasian, and Cannabis Sativa says, "Fuck Bill Gates."
Yeah, fuck Bill Gates.
I'm with you.
This global vaccine.
And I'm sorry, Ellen.
Goal is it's playing. The pandemic is playing right into his hands.
God.
We got to break that barrier down with stigma and like Dr. Sherry Yafai said. But, hey, listen, we've had more, because of the protests and the people in the streets, we've had more movement on police reform than in 20 years through politics, through electoral politics. And we've seen more move on this call for cannabis legalization as lawmakers like Bernie Sanders and Cory Booker and who's the other guy? Lou Correa and a number of other folks. Let's listen to what Bernie had to say. Of course, he was also out in the Chicago Tribune this week with an op-ed. If you want police reform, legalize marijuana. He would have been the guy to do it with an executive order. Let's hear what he has to say from the floor of the Senate.
Changing the standard from willfulness to recklessness. We need to ban the use of facial recognition technology by the police. Finally, and certainly not least importantly, we need to legalize marijuana. In the midst of the many crises we face as a country, it is absurd
If it weren't for Obama,
that under the Federal Controlled Substance Act, marijuana is at Schedule 1
for that meddling
along with
ex-president.
killer drugs like heroin. State after state has moved to legalize marijuana, and it is time for the federal government to do the same. When we talk about police department reform, we must end police officers continuing to arrest, search, or jail the people of our country, predominantly people of color, for using marijuana.
We could have had him if not for Obama. Not for Obama. Obama could have ended the drug war, too. Obama could have done a few things that would have hindered the progression of Trump. But I digress.
for that meddling ex-president.
Weren't for that meddling ex-president.
We could have had Sanders.
So we have many of these calls coming from the task force, Biden's task force that we got. We got a task force, everybody. It's a task force. What a task it is. Convincing the king of the drug war and mass incarceration that cannabis users shouldn't be forced into rehab as he wants. He doesn't want people locked up. He wants forced mandatory rehab. That's a Biden position. Bernie Sanders, Cory Booker want legal cannabis on what it would mean for the people of color. Well, it turns out that really kind of the question of today is legalization decriminalization? Or is it just recriminalization? Now, there's a bunch of decriminalization bills and laws being pushed around the country in localities and in some of the news. It's certainly the topic of national conversation. It's in the Hill, criminalization that never should have been cannabis. Dr. Sherry talked about this. Of course, the demonization of Mexicans early on and blacks, and that the Library of Congress, according to Marijuana Moment, has put out a nice collection of the highlights of racist news coverage used to justify criminalizing marijuana a century ago. And here's just a couple of there's links here to these different articles. Here's just a taste. This from the Memphis Appeal, April 25th, 1887. I quote, Mexican priest flogs the corpse of a dead wizard. From the article, from the blurb, Jesus Molines, a Zacatecas whose girl had been untrue to him, committed suicide by smoking several enormous cigarettes of marijuana while lying in a pool abounding with venomous insects, which, while he was insensible, destroyed his life. So that's a beauty. He committed suicide by smoking several enormous cigarettes of marijuana while lying in a pool abounding with venomous insects.
I'll try it, except for the bugs.
Fear factor.
Nope, I'll try it except for the bugs.
Fear is not a factor with that guy. This from the Florida Star, October 16th, 1908, people. Turns out even they found a use for the deadly weed. Headline, use for deadly weed. Mexican marijuana plant to be grown in Texas for drug purposes. What, you mean even during Prohibition? Even during, oh, that's right. It was a medicine before all this, wasn't it?
Indeed.
I'd love to read. This is an amazing article here. The deadly marijuana plant is to be introduced into Texas from Mexico by special permission of the state agricultural department. James Love, who conducts an agricultural experiment station near Cuero, Texas, has returned from a trip to the marijuana producing region of Mexico, bringing with him 10 pounds of the seed of the plant which he will plant. It is the belief of Mr. Love that the plant can be put to good commercial use as a drug. He says that it is known to be a cure for asthma, and it is also thought to be valuable in the treatment of tuberculosis. It is said to be far more powerful than India hemp, of which it is a species. India hemp is recognized in the Materia Medica as a valuable drug. The marijuana weed is known as the most harmful of narcotic drugs. Its leaves, when smoked in the form of cigarettes, produce a series of insanity and frequently ends in death. So terrible are the effects of marijuana that a law was passed by the National Congress of Mexico a few years ago, making it penitentiary offense for a person to smoke or use the plant in any form. It is said that the plant is so seductive. Wait, where's the rest? Oh, here we go. It is said that the plant is so seductive that that the smoking of one cigarette made of its leaves will cause one to become addicted to its use. Notwithstanding the stringent law in Mexico against the use of the plant, it is a common practice for cigarettes made of its leaves to be smuggled to the soldiers in the barracks in different parts of the country. More than one riot among the soldiers has been caused from smoking weed. So, yes, we have a long history of demonizing the plant, its users, and this week we have a little taste thanks to the Library of Congress, showing us how it was demonized, yet also raised up as a medicine at the same time.
How rad is it that they have that search tool there? Right?
That is pretty cool.
Congress?
That is pretty cool. And it's a section. These have been uploaded. So that is pretty interesting. But it's all the rage now. Congressmen calling for the ending marijuana criminalization on a policing reform bill. Of course, Sanders and Booker. Hey, good news! Pot prisoner Craig Cesal, C-E-S-A-L. I'm probably saying that way wrong. Released after 18 years in federal prison for pot conspiracy to sell weed. He was serving a life sentence behind bars without the possibility of parole for a first-time nonviolent marijuana conspiracy offense. And on June 17, 2020, after 18 years in prison, he was released to home confinement due to risks posed by COVID-19 on federal prison population. Cesal, 61, who suffers from diabetes and lung issues, had been approved for home confinement by the Bureau of Prisons. And then the warden of FCI Terre Haute blocked the order, sending a shock of disappointment to his family. But eventually it happened. He is a white guy. I'm just saying. But there are lots of people of color that are also in jail for life for pot, and I don't think they're being released. I'm glad he's released. No one should be in jail for anything related to weed at all. But let's do it for everybody.
And all these waves of, we're decriminalizing, we're legalizing. No, you're not.
No.
You're still putting caveats. Like Alexis Bortel says, it's tyranny. There should be no, I really feel there should be no 2 ounces. The fuck. No measurements. If cannabis is legal, it's legal. Period.
Listen, all it takes is look at the knuckleheads are grabbing hemp all over the place because it's the question of legality. If you and of course, sure. Oh, it's great. Oh, under 2 ounces. You know who's going to be able to carry around under 2 ounces? Me. No problem. But there's going to be other people of color who are not going to be able to carry around 2 ounces. They're going to be exploited. Or it's like, oh, it's over 2 ounces. You're done. Look at all the busts this week have been for 40 pounds, 20 pounds.
I've seen video of cops
10 pounds.
planting weed in people's car. What's going to stop them from adding a few ounces to somebody's bust? No, there should be no
Guns and
caveats
drugs
on
get
this.
planted all the time, and that's all you have to do to make somebody eligible for arrest.
We got to end the drug war. More than just cannabis. We have to decriminalize all drugs.
These are all incremental.
drugs.
These are all incremental measures, playing around the edges. It's all a game. It's all a political game being played by all these politicians, including Bernie Sanders. Although I would take Bernie Sanders by far more above anybody. Although I'm very disappointed in his support for Joe Biden. But what are you going to do? We knew this was coming. We knew this was coming, and it's the fazoolery was more than apparent this time than it was last time, even. So, we are where we are, and where we are is the promises met, promises made, promises kept. Well, Donald Trump was making promises to Cory Booker, or not Cory Booker, Cory Gardner in Colorado about, getting some of his legislation through. But it turns out it's all been a joke, folks. You think? You think it's all been a joke? Well, let's listen.
Has there been any talk of moving out marijuana legalization ahead of November? Trump promised it to Gardner. Because some people say that disproportionately hurts minority communities.
I'm not aware of anything
Who's talking? Who's
on
talking?
the agenda for the Senate or the House that would move a bill in that regard.
Oh, Chief of Staff.
That is the Chief of Staff,
White
Mark
House has
Meadows.
not weighed in on that.
No. Acting Chief of Staff of. So
I think he just
funny.
kept laughing long enough so he could think of something to say.
Yeah, exactly. No, there has been no talk in the White House about marijuana legalization.
I bet there has.
Kimmy Kardashian, it's time to step up.
He laughed too long. Methinks thou dost protest too much. He
That's
laughed
interesting.
too long.
I like your analysis.
It's the first time I've heard it, and that was my.
And it was a forced
feeling.
laugh. Even.
It was forced, and it was way too long.
Well, we know from
That's why it has to. It's October surprise. He can't give it away.
We know from the Lev tapes, Let Lev Speak, that he brought up cannabis and and decriminalization, and so there were people in the room that were trying to get Donald's ear.
He planted the
cannabis.
seed months ago. Let Kimmy water it. I gotta write her a note.
Let Kimmy fertilize it.
She's all up in this
nurture
business
that
right now.
seed. Mm-hmm. Yes. So the acting chief of staff for the Trumpster is not amused, or I guess he is amused by the thought of cannabis legalization, and that I guess they got other fish to fry, like not testing. Just stop testing. I told them all, stop testing. So that's that. Donald doesn't. I don't know, unless he wants to pull something out. I'm telling you, Kimmy has to get in on it, and he'll change his mind and pull it out of his butt.
We should start tweeting at her.
He should.
We should start tweeting at her about it from our Cannabis Helps Dementia page, from Hemp Saves the World,
Hey, listen,
DC 420 Revolution.
It'd be an easy win, but he's a law and order president. He's calling for cracking
He can
heads.
change the fucking law.
He's calling for cracking heads.
Yeah, well, okay. You know what? He's not going to decriminalize all drugs, but he might deschedule cannabis.
Well, listen, you know what really did? Well, as Gavin Newsom of the governor of the great state of California would say, we met the moment in California by legalizing cannabis for equity.
He's lying.
With probably one of the worst legal cannabis regulations in the country. If you want to change some laws about what's going on in California, take away the tax money from the police. Defund the police by defunding them from the cannabis taxes, because every cannabis law that's ever passed, the police want their cut. They want their cut of the drug money, like they always do, like they do from the black market, from the traditional market, the unregulated market in every city. They want their cut for stuff to operate, and they wanted their cut from every cannabis law. But this law doesn't address that, what it should, by removing those taxes. This law makes the bureaucracy less of a bureaucracy. I don't know if that's the thing. They're basically what they want to do is combine all of the state agencies into one big agency for cannabis. And of course, as Dr. Yafai mentioned, they're not interested in patients at all. This is all about the recreation market, adult use market. It's all about shutting down the traditional markets. They're hiring BCC regulators to shut down unregulated operations. Or investigators. There's a job. Chela, we can get that job.
No. I'd rather be a contact tracer for coronavirus.
Rather contract trace for coronavirus.
Yeah, well, that way I can kind of learn about how they're going to stalk us and how they're invading our privacy. At least then I'll know.
They will know. Yeah, we'll have advanced knowledge.
At least I'll be helping find sick people.
You'll have to,
or alerting people that they might be sick.
You'll have to download that app they're going to make you have on your phone. You'll have to
get
have
a
it on
different
your
phone for the whole situation.
Yeah.
That would be my idea, my fantasy idea.
In other state news, Vegan Metro, Nevada, doing something good. Nevada State Board of Pardon Commissioners passes resolution pardoning those convicted of minor marijuana offenses. Minor. Should be everybody. If it's nonviolent and it's marijuana related, it should be gone. But apparently 15,000 people are going to be affected by this, getting their records scrubbed at no cost to them, I don't think. So that's good news coming out of Nevada. Always good to see people's records be cleaned for silly laws like cannabis violation. Incremental, but that's 15,000 people who maybe have another chance in Nevada. Yeah. Meanwhile, COVID was questionable as to whether cannabis was going to end up on ballots this year, thanks to COVID pandemic and signature gathering efforts. But it looks like cannabis activists will not be deterred. South Dakota might be moving forward. Marijuana legalization advocates launch campaign to get initiative on the November ballot. That, I guess they have enough time to do that. They're trying, so that's good. Meanwhile, in Montana, activists submitted 130,000 signatures for marijuana legalization despite coronavirus setbacks. They were able to do it, which is kind of exciting. Quote, we've overcome a global pandemic, wildfires, floods, hail, snow, and hurricane-force winds, Pepper Peterson, spokesperson for New Approach Montana, said in a press release. Our campaign implemented strict health protocols and worked around the clock so that Montana voters could sign our petitions safely and qualify these popular initiatives for the Nevada November ballot. We collected signatures from every corner of the state and all 100 state House districts. Congratulations, Montana. It will be on the ballot in November. Georgia lawmakers, there you go, Chela. They've done it, including marijuana decriminalization for policing reform bill. I believe it's 2 ounces. Or is that, let's see. It says, no, this is a little different. Under the decriminalization component, state law would be amended to make it so possession of up to a half an ounce of marijuana would be a misdemeanor punishable by a maximum of $300 fine without a threat of time. Possession of more than a half ounce, but less than 2 ounces, would carry a penalty of up to 1 year in jail and a maximum fine of $1,000 or up to 1 year in community service. How is that better? That's better? Wait, that's better? The law they had? I guess so. It's Georgia. It's called the Georgia Justice Act. So decriminalization means different things to different people. Sometimes it's just a lowering of a fine and prison time. I guess that is decriminalization, if you're going to look at the broad spectrum of definition. New Jersey, that's the one. New Jersey is going to give you 2 ounces. The blue state is going to give you 2 ounces before they arrest you. New Jersey lawmakers advanced a bill this week that would decriminalize marijuana possession of up to 2 ounces, a major step forward to stopping weed arrests in the state. The state assembly voted 63-10 with 5 abstentions to pass the bill, which would replace arrest for possession of 2 ounces of marijuana with a $50 fine. It also lessens jail time and fines for larger amounts on a sliding scale. So that's progressive New Jersey. Kansas City mayor files measure to remove all local penalties for marijuana possession. Let's see how much they're giving you in Kansas City under this tyranny. Mayor Quinton Lucas and 4 members of city council filed the cannabis measure, which would repeal a provision of the code stipulating that possession of 35 grams or less carries a $25 fine, with more than 35 grams punishable by $500. The new law would reduce petty offenses. Let's see, the ordinance is expected, let's see, what is it going to reduce it to? Blah, blah, blah. Let me find it. It would end all penalties for marijuana possession under the municipality's local laws. So that looks like anything.
Is that Virginia?
That's Kansas City.
Oh, Kansas City. Cannabis Sativa tells us that Virginia decrim kicks in July 1st, 1 full ounce.
1 full ounce in Virginia.
I say it's lame to have limits on how much you can take with you.
Limits are lame.
Nobody limits how much lettuce I get from the store.
Well, they do. So they limit toilet paper.
They do limit toilet paper. That's true. I'm having a hot flash.
Hot flash. Well,
Wound up
cannabis
about
might be good
limits.
for that. Your FICO at night does good for that.
I know, I need more.
We talked about it for migraines and the great studies
story.
coming out of Israel. Migraine frequency decrease following prolonged medical cannabis treatment. Prolonged. A cross-sectional study. Very exciting. We already talked about how, getting cannabis into the black community is imperative. They could use it, but it's harder than one would think. Of course, that's my white privilege talking. But CBD, Project CBD has a great article this week, actually, about the challenges of hemp farming while black. Can rural African Americans overcome centuries of oppression to forge a new agrarianism with cannabis? And it's looks at features green heifer farms in North Carolina. African American woman owned. Clarenda Stanley is the CEO and talks about her challenges being a hemp farmer in New America. And of course, hemp is all the rage, and I'm sure some of the challenges are very similar as they are in the cannabis industry with getting loans, with other things. So check that article out. In Mary Jane this week, also Alaska. Tax revenue. Cannabis is essential. Cannabis is booming in the COVID. And Alaska is of course, Alaska, I think, has some of the lowest taxes. Do they not, Chela? As I recall.
What?
I think Alaska has pretty low taxes, don't they?
Yeah, I think so. They also get money back from the state because of their stuff. But
they brought in $2 million in 1 month in tax revenue.
Gypsy Lady Lee was locked up for 2.5 days because of profiling, and they didn't let her take a shower or call someone to get her out. Fuck the police, man. Sorry, Brian.
Oh, and they were the stories of what they were doing with protesters here in LA and in Southern California is just remarkable. I mean, they people who don't think we we don't live in a police state are delusional. All you got to do is step out of line, question authority, and the jig is up. Ben Collardi, welcome to the show. Joining us on Facebook.
Ben Collardi.
Of course, we are multi-streaming on
nice to see ya.
YouTube, Facebook, DLive, Periscope. Thanks for joining us as
We're
we
just
discuss
about
the
wrapping
news.
up, aren't we?
Well, we are getting close to wrapping up the news portion of our show, which, of course, we'll finish the show off. We are talking about all the news headlines this week. And hemp for horses, it's true. Studies show it might work. Researchers at Tarleton are studying the use of CBD to calm horses and other livestock.
All mammals. Cannabis seems to be good for all mammals.
I think anybody that's got anything that's got an endocannabinoid system, which is apparently everything, even sea slugs, I think, have an endocannabinoid system or some form of it. And it turns out, and some of that research I forgot to mention that Dedi Meiri was saying, it isn't just CB1 and CB2, guys. They've identified like 44 different receptors, cannabinoid receptors, in the body so far, and they're different receptors for different types of cannabinoids, it's fascinating what's going on. It's just we're just getting
It's an exciting time to be alive.
Scratching the surface of everything, but you know what? It may be good for horses too, and it's also good for sparkling water. I guess so. Yeah, it's Ocean Spray launches sparkling water.
Could be good for capitalism.
Sparkling CBD water. Is
Also
it,
good for capitalism.
Is the CBD sparkling or is the water sparkling? I don't understand. CBD is an oil base, first of all. Ocean Spray launches sparkling CBD water in Colorado.
They have nano powdery
Nanoparticles, yes.
things now.
Water dissolvable.
Yeah.
A company says that sparkling CBD water was developed by Ocean Spray new Carry On brand. In their food business reported, flavors are called Elevate and Descend. One with 10 milligrams of CBD and the other with 20 milligrams of CBD. So more marketing fazoolery there.
You know what? If they had that at the airport, I would totally drink one.
I will tell you, however, get hemp.
Yep. Get hemp.
Get hemp.
Yes. I am really enjoying my Get Hemp CBD caps that are 20 milligrams each.
We know a company that Get Hemp. We take their CBD oil.
Just started.
And their hand sanitizer too. And we are really liking it.
Yeah, I liking it a lot.
This. I take 20 milligrams in the morning, sometimes a little more, and it is very uplifting, not sedative at all, and super focusing. And it's a all organic hemp product, made from Oregon hemp, under the THC level, but with full of all the other cannabinoids. And it's a great product. Get Hemp.
Get Hemp.
I believe they have a website. I don't know if it's up and running yet. But watch for Get Hemp, and we'll probably be talking about it more in the future because it is actually an amazing CBD product. Mm-hmm. And it turns out, speaking of the cannabis industry, this in Forbes this week. Science reveals that cannabis industry's greatest lie. You're buying weed wrong, and so is everyone else. Chris Roberts writes for Vices in Forbes, coming out this week. There's much more to cannabis than THC. For solid proof, look no further than the CBD boom. But when it comes to moving product on the legal recreational market, only two numbers matter: the list price and the THC content. Super potent cannabis flowers with THC percentages of 25% and up dominate dispensary shelves. High THC cannabis will sell out very quickly, while lower percentage weed gathers dust. When cannabis tests at more than 25% THC, dispensaries can justify charging $75 or more for a store-bought eighth, because there's a very good chance people will pay it, confident that they're taking home the best and most potent weed available. It's the weed in the teens. It's the weeds in the teens. Well, it had better be cheap. The problem is, that's all wrong. All of it. Not only does THC content have nothing to do with how good the weed is, all recent research conducted by the University of Colorado and published in JAMA, surprisingly they published something, found that THC content is a poor indicator of potency. High THC weed doesn't even get you more high. Researchers at the University of Colorado at Boulder's Institute of Cognitive Science documented the experiences of 121 cannabis users. Half the study participants were users of cannabis concentrates, very high THC cannabis extracts. The other half preferred cannabis flower. Both groups received cannabis at varying strengths. Flowers users tried cannabis flower at either 16% or 24%, and extract users received oil at either 70% or 90% THC. Researchers checked study participants' blood and monitored their mood, cognitive function, and intoxication level before, immediately after, and 1 hour after use. As the researchers expected, the concentrate users had very high levels of THC in their bodies after use, but they weren't more high. In fact, every participant's self-reported highness was about the same, as were their measures of balance and cognitive impairment. As CU noted in a news release, medium THC flower, high THC flower, all the same. This was not what the researchers were expecting. Get yourself some bargain weed, people. You're throwing your money away. It's like taking a 2,000 milligrams of ascorbic acid and your pee turning yellow because you're pissing it all out. Probably not the most romantic metaphor, but turns out, and I quite frankly agree. I don't notice a significant difference between, say, 16% weed and 28% weed or 27% weed. Certainly not the stuff we buy in the stores.
Not flour.
Not flour.
I don't notice any difference in flour. I do notice when I take more, like in full extraction cannabis oil, or if I have a dab.
Right. Concentrated concentrates.
A big dab at a store, not like a home dab.
Right.
A home dab, I do just a little tiny bit, and it's just a little enough.
And you know that has a lot to do with temperature, and that has a lot to do with what other stuff might that's getting consumed and
who
heated up.
knows what else is happening there?
And,
I don't know.
And it's already, you know,
I'm not saying it's bad.
Linalool is what makes you sleepy, you know, and some high THC strains. You know, that's one of the things that is the, you know, part of the entourage effect, part of the whole plant. A lot of this study, the research that's coming out of Israel is literally you change a plant even with the same ratio of THC to CBD, and the effect is completely different medicinally. So they're really trying to break it down to the minor cannabinoids, flavonoids, terpenes, everything else that's in the plant. They're finding stuff that's like, oh, well, it's not even the THC or the CBD. That's what the article in the Forbes, read from the end of that article about Dedi Meiri in Forbes this week, written by Abby Rosner. His conclusion from another interview that he did. So after ruling out just CBD and THC, I asked him what does he suspect is making the difference. He says, quote, I am 100% sure it's not the THC and CBD because I already eliminated them, but I'm not really sure about the rest. I'm suspecting that the flavonoids might be playing a big role here. Just a few cannabinoids or families of cannabinoids, but mainly probably flavonoids and terpenoids. Give me a few months and then I'll tell you. So what he's finding is it may not even be the CBD or the THC.
Might be some other thing.
It might be something completely else inside the cannabis plant that's causing that's bringing all great medical benefits for things. And maybe THC is really just to get you high.
I don't know, but I think that listen, when people living with dementia in real life take a mint and it just has THC, it's an isolate.
Right.
Isn't it? And those mints, I'm pretty sure they're isolates.
Well, certainly we've heard...
Or they're like such trace little tiny amounts of just anything else that might be in there.
Well, we're not experts or doctors,
we're not experts,
but we have heard from a couple
have it in front of me.
on our podcast that have said, a 5 milligram gummy for a dementia patient, you don't get the placebo effect, or is one of the questions is, if you're telling people they're taking up something that's going to make them high, they're going to feel high because that's just the way the brain works. And so, but then they test blood levels and they find that they don't have the measurable levels in the blood. So is that affect something that's going on with dementia patients? Probably not. You're going to see, but they're also not saying whether they're high or not,
No, but
you are seeing effects.
Yeah,
medically.
You're seeing that they're not anxious.
Right. So it's not a placebo effect.
It's definitely not a placebo.
On super low doses of just THC because they're using isolates in some cases. In some cases,
exciting.
They're using full spectrum.
I mean, I would love to be able to try just a 2.5 mint on somebody to see if it helped them. I mean, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and how economical
so affordable.
Is that? So affordable. 2.5 milligrams of THC is nothing. You take a 10 milligram gummy, which is what you sell in California, cut that into 4 little squares, and you got 2.5 dosages. Really easy, and some of them are even perforated that way. So yeah, low dosing, guys. Turns out, try the cheap weed in your dispensary. Try that 16-18%. See if it does it for you.
Healer.com has some really great dosing protocols and also like resensitizing protocols, and they're free. These free videos, they're really good. Dr. Sulak is amazing. He's going to be on Cannabis Helps Dementia later in July or August, I think.
And we are trying to get David Meiri on the show as well.
Yes, I sent him a note over the weekend. Hopefully he'll get back this week and see if he might be interested.
Because that's big news, because we asked him specifically last year.
We did in September.
He seemed to not really know anything about what was going on in his lab with Alzheimer's at the time. He was focusing on cancer for sure and doing a presentation. He was a busy guy, and maybe he was just blowing us off. I don't know, but I want to know more.
I definitely want to know more. I have questions.
how they know the endocannabinoid deficiency is contributing to dementia. I
Yeah,
wanna know how
where
they know
show me
that.
the studies
I want to
so
know.
I can share.
I want to know how Kate Mouse is getting better with Alzheimer's in the mouse model, Kate Mouse. It's just that mouse
Little
mouse
dad
model
joke,
lives
man.
matter. I mean, yeah, where they said the pain is a Dr. Tischler said where they break the mouse's leg and then they treat it for pain.
They sacrifice the mice too.
And then they sacrifice them.
But no.
And then they give them. How do you give a How do you give a mouse arthritis? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
And then you have to rub their little knees with the cream, like Vegan Metro said he'll do.
Yeah, I'll do it too.
Yeah.
It's so cute.
But not the rats.
They're scary. Anyway.
And they say mice models aren't really perfect because they don't line up super well with humans. So you need those human studies, and those are the studies that are the ones they won't print. Those like Dr. Sherry says, she's got somebody off of opioids and all the other 180 milligrams of effective
morphine, yeah.
Morphine effective, and they got them off in 3 months.
In 3 months with inhaled
cannabis. And they won't print it. And they won't print it because of cannabis in the title.
And inhaled, I'm sure that was a part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, inhaled cannabis, that would blow the lid off of everything.
And speaking
She's
of
radical.
and speaking of cannabis prohibition, and in states around the world and Israel, looks like they're going to legalize recreational cannabis in Israel. Cannabis legalization bill clears first hurdle. Now, medical has been very restricted in Israel and legal for a number of years. And cannabis use in Israel is high for medical as well as other. It's one of the highest cannabis uses countries in the world. And looks like they finally caught up with society over there. Legislation will decriminalize possession of up to 50 grams. You get 50 grams in Israel, while legalizing possession and consumption of up to 15 grams by people above 21. So if you're under 21, you can hang out with 50 grams, and over 21, it's going to be legal. And now that they're also talking about regulating and selling it. It's the first step, and it has to go to the full Knesset. But they are making moves in Israel to, quote, legalize, decriminalize. All very nebulous terms, people. Legalization is the answer to ending the drug war. Not really. Not really. It's just reorganizing it.
Yep.
It's just reorganizing the drug war.
Alexis Bortel knew this, and she was very, very clear-eyed about it, and still is.
Dennis Perone legalized cannabis in California, essentially, by giving you a defense in court for your use. But that was it. And then Prop 64 just made a tax and regulation scheme that and guess we had a social equity program in cannabis in California and in Los Angeles. And in Los Angeles, a social equity program, $10 million that was supposed to go to the social equity candidates in Los Angeles licensing program went to pay for LAPD overtime.
Yeah.
Above and beyond the taxation.
It's
So-
horse pucky.
Cannabis industry is funding the war on drugs. So whenever you buy your legal regulated cannabis, you're supporting law enforcement and the war on drugs. Just realize that when you're participating in this system of legal cannabis. Also, international news, United Nations will be meeting. Of course, they've been getting a lot of comments. CDC, was it CDC? NIDA looking for comments. They got a record number of comments with regards to dosing. So that's interesting. But United Nations has been soliciting comments from the FDA, from all over, and they're going to have a meeting. They're going to have a big meeting, and they're going to do some rescheduling, it looks like. They are meeting is scheduled for next week to discuss certain World Health Organization recommendations on cannabis and cannabis-related substances. And what they're doing is 2 of the 6 WHO cannabis scheduling recommendations will be discussed in next week's meeting. Recommendation 5.4 and 5.5. First recommendation, if adopted, would delete cannabis, quote, extracts and tinctures from Schedule 1 of the 1961 Single Convention on Narcotics. Adopting 5.4 would decrease the level of control of any cannabis-related substance or narrow the scope of control. Control. It's all about control. They're still controlling. And my favorite one is Recommendation 5.5, which apparently the WHO is in the pocket of big CBD. Because recommendation big CBD, because recommendation 5.5 pertains to CBD. If the recommendation is adopted, a footnote would be added to the cannabis entry in Schedule 1 of the 1961 treaty to clarify that preparations containing predominantly CBD and up to 2.2% THC are not under international control. And you can ship your CBD products all over the world if they adopt that recommendation.
That would be amazeballs.
Oh, that's going to blow up the international CBD industry, which is already exploding. And I think that just about wraps up the headlines of the news this week. Make sure you tell your elected officials to deschedule cannabis and end the war on drugs. Don't just reorganize it. I mean, it's all well and good to think you've got legal cannabis. Then it's all a big lie. It's not. It's not legal in any sense of the, you can't grow it in California in your backyard without special discompensation from landlords and neighborhoods and things. Personally, so it's not legal. It's regulated, which is not freedom. Free the plant, free the people. That's what I always say.
Yes, it is.
And thank you guys for joining us today for Cannabis Saves the World. The new video, unlaggy video of our podcast will be available soon on the channel. You can watch Dr. Sherry Yafai without the Bruce Lee dubbing. I don't know why that's happening. I hope to figure that out by next week. I don't know. Was Dedi in sync? Was that video in sync? I don't know. That's only uploaded at 360, which is interesting. So it may be out of sync too. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on. But the information's good, and we have fun here every Sunday. That's for sure.
You can always look at the chat if the lips are bothering you.
If the lips are bothering you, just get in the chat. And the chat has been going off today.
Super chatty. Super chatty. Lovely chatting with all you nice people. Thank you so much for coming by.
Brian Arbor, thank you for the super chat.
Yes, and thank you for the super chat.
Appreciate it.
Happy Father's Day to all the dads and people with dads.
Happy Father's Day.
People who had dads.
To the pet dads, the plant dads, the real dads, the dabbing dads. And may we end the war on drugs and really decriminalize this harmless but helpful plant that can do so much for so many people, make so many people happy, healthy, and less stressed in these times. So many people with not just dementia, but just on so many levels could use this plant to great effect to get through these times.
Yeah.
And we thank you for helping us get through them on Sundays at 4:00, and we will see you next week, if not before. We will be at the protest on Wednesday in downtown LA because it's working to get Jackie Lacey out. Endorsements are slipping away slowly, but they are starting to drop, which is very exciting. And I'm sure Black Lives Matter LA was very hopeful that now that they've gotten, they're after almost 3 years of being out there every Wednesday, starting to see some movement, and they've been ready. They've been ready for this period. They were ready.
Yep,
they were ready to walk into that city council and present the people's budget for LA, and it's totally a way forward. And really, the more they can implement from that plan, the better. And we need to defund the police, end the drug war, and
we
join
could
us
go
next
on
week.
forever.
We could go on forever.
Have a great night, everybody.
Free the plant, free the people, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Oh, Gypsy Lady Lee, thank you very much.
Oh my gosh,
You're
thank
very
you.
kind.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. We love you guys.
And Timbuktu, hi and goodbye. Thanks
Hi.
for joining us at the end, but lovely to see you all.
You can rewind.
That's
Be
right.
kind, rewind.
Cool.
Love you all. See you next
everybody.
week.
Take good care.
Oops. Unmute the music.
Murderers keep murdering. murdering. The churches keep a-burning. The rapists keep a-raping. And the tide ain't turning. Uncle Sam, for all your power, things get worse every hour. It seems to me your energy's all wasted, chasing my friends and me. So hey, Uncle Sam, hey there, Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. The terrorists keep terrorizing. Our leaders keep a-lying. The haters keep a-hating. And the planet's dying. Uncle Sam, do what's proper. Call off your dogs and your helicopters. The problems of society were not caused by my friends and me. So hey, Uncle Sam, hey there, Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. How many innocent people gonna be imprisoned? We just peace and love and street pop and brotherhood freaks. A touch of Mother Nature never made nobody violent, never made nobody hate, nobody will break nobody's peace. Since we've never been shown to be harmful, don't you tell me no lies with your caffeine, codeine, nicotine eyes. The cannabis man is just recent, just since 1938 to re-legalize it, realize it. You made a big mistake. Hey, Uncle Sam, hey there, Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. Leave us pot smokers alone. Uncle Sam, understand I love you, but leave me alone. Leave us pot smokers alone. Our leaders keep alive.
Good people don't smoke marijuana. This drug is dangerous. You cannot play with it. It's not funny. It's not something to laugh about.
Yes, I'm all in. This is the time to go all in on cannabis.
You can argue the pluses and minuses of marijuana, but marijuana ain't heroin. So we have to end that, and that's what I will do. As President of the United States, I believe we can do that through executive order, and I will do that.
He would have done that.